founder of the Price of Freedom Foundation. Welcome to our website. I want to talk a little bit about why I think the Price of Freedom Foundation is important. The mission that we have is important. We are dedicated to telling the life stories of those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who died while in military service to our nation. Each of these people paid that ultimate price. Their lives ended sooner than they should. I believe that those lives need to be honored and remembered, done so in a way that is more in-depth than what we currently do. What we're about is telling the full story. Certainly we want to talk about their service to the nation, but we want to talk about more, who they were as a person, what made them unique, what were their hopes and dreams, what were they good at, what did they struggle with, how did their loss impact their families and their friends. So that's really the heart and the soul of who we are and what we do. So what we want is for you to hopefully join us and join us in this mission. There are very few people in this country who have had the ability to tell their loved one's story completely. We believe that every family should have that opportunity, and that's what we're here to provide. So we will find as many people that knew your lost loved one as possible, do in-depth interviews with them, accept copies of other things that are going to be important for telling their story, provide this information to a professional biographer, produce a full biography in hardbound editions to you as a family member, and make other copies available to the general public. We want to tell their story to a wider audience, as wide of an audience as possible. And so that means that we're going to take the videos that we make while we're doing those interviews and tell that story in a video documentary style as well, to as wide of an audience as possible. Because we know that we don't want your loved one to be forgotten. I know you don't want that either. And we want, through the books, to be able to give you something that will be handed down to future generations so that they won't have to be dependent upon the current generation to tell that story. So please join us and help us bring this mission and this vision to reality for every Gold Star family. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Today is Memorial Day. It's the day that our nation sets aside to remember those who paid the ultimate price. You just heard the video I created a couple of years back about what our vision and intent is. And today I'm honored to have several guests lined up. Our first one is Marie Slider. I apologize, I'm not reading your the last name, Marie. I want to welcome you to the live stream. I'm honored that you are with us, and I know that you have a number of people that you want to pay tribute to today. I know that you have a hard time limit because of other commitments you have, and so this time is yours. Thank you.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
I'm super glad to be here. So, I am Marie Slider Henriksen is my last
There we
name.
go.
Yeah.
Apologize. Yeah, I knew it, but I couldn't read it because these old eyes and small print. So
Oh, it's totally okay. Thank you so much for having me on here. I love what you're doing. You are an inspiration, and if anybody is interested, I host a veteran podcast, and you can go to sliderbabe.com to check it out. And coming up shortly, we will have Dennis's episode airing. We were so honored to interview him and get to know him and just learn a little bit more about his story and the reasons behind what he's doing. And yeah.
thank you.
It's
It was an honor, and it was a fun time too. I mean, I really enjoyed that conversation. So today's a little bit less fun because we're really going to be talking about some people that you knew and that were close to you that paid that ultimate price. And so I know we are I know you only have a limited time with us, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. So, the first thing that I want to do is I want to read a quote from a really amazing company. And I'm wearing their shirt right now, Till Valhalla Project. If you guys have never heard of them, please check them out. They are doing some amazing work. They offer plaques to people that we've lost either through suicide or through from the service while they're in, and they're just amazing. They offer plaques to the family members. And a quote that they have on one of their shirts that I just love is, "A hero never dies until the last time their name is spoken. Continue to honor them and they will live on forever." And that's Corey Schaefer of the Till Valhalla Project. And
Uh,
that's just a quote that I just love, and that's
I,
the reality.
I love it. I love what they're doing. I'm jealous that they've got such great talent and such great graphics and the like. Wish I had something come some even a little bit close to that.
Yeah.
I very much support what they're doing. So great.
So one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize, that I am not getting paid for this, right? I just really respect what Till Valhalla is doing. But Till Valhalla, the reason why, they kind of picked that name, my understanding, like I can't speak for them, but my understanding is that idea that when we go to war, or when we're trained for war, even when we get back, even if we make it back a whole person, right? We are still fighting the battle. We're still fighting this war. And so a big thing with that is, according to like ancient traditions and whatnot, when people die during war, they go to Valhalla, and that's where a warrior's death takes you. And so the idea is those that die in battle will go to Valhalla, but also those of us that came back and we're still fighting that battle, we're still fighting. And so no matter how we die when we get back, we're going to Valhalla as well. And I just love that concept. And last night I did not sleep very well because Memorial Day is still rough for me.
I understand.
There for a very long time it was kind of, there was a lot of survivor's guilt that I had from my deployment because I wasn't the best soldier. I was very lost in addictions when I was over there, and I also got medically discharged. I'd been in Iraq for 8 months when my hips gave out, and they ended up putting me on a desk job, when I got back. And I kind of felt, and then I got medically discharged, and right as my unit is getting ready to deploy again. So there was a lot of survivor's guilt that I had for
Yeah.
many, many years, and I was just lost in my addictions and victim mentality. Poor me, why did I have to experience this? And then when people I knew, when I got sober about 9 years ago, and when I got sober, I started kind of processing through my traumas and processing through some of my losses. But then around 2020, and even before that, there were many people that I knew that ended up not being able to handle the isolation,
Yeah.
and they chose to go home.
Yeah.
And some of those I know were intentional from what I have learned, and some of them were accidental with addictions, you know. But
Hmm.
there was a lot of pain and frustration. I was struggling in that point. I have had suicidal ideations multiple times. I've dealt with a lot of mental health issues. And so for a very long time, I was kind of stuck in this like pain and anger and frustration and resentments. But one of the things that always gave me solace with all of this is my spiritual belief that I am going to see all of these people again.
Yeah.
And I want to, before I go into details of the people that I have lost, I want to read this first poem. I'm going to read two poems today.
Hmm.
And I want to read this first poem that I wrote back when I was almost a year sober, when I
Hmm.
was just trying to remember the people that have passed away and trying to find peace in knowing that they're there. And so this is and my belief is that anybody that I've ever met and people that I've never met and people that I will meet, they're in my squad of angels.
Got it.
They are there fighting for me on the other side, you know? And so
Mhm.
this is called my squad of angels.
Okay. Cool.
They're not that far away, all those who passed before. They're waiting for my arrival just behind this mortal door. They're watching and guiding prayerfully in the space that's just beyond. They're in the creases of my heart, a place they're very fond. They're floating through my memories to help sort out my past. They want me to find happiness, but their flag is at half mast. They do this to help me bear the weight of struggles along the way. They want to give their strength to me during every painful day. They wait beyond my consciousness, their warmth they want to share. Sometimes I feel it blowing in the wind that moves my hair. I see them in a stranger's face as a flicker or a feeling. Sometimes the similarities scare me through the ceiling. I wonder if that person may be sent from one who passed, or if a chance connection is a hook my loved ones cast. They're always looking out for dangers along my way because a path of positivity may be just a choice away. They speak to me with whispers, heard with my heart, not ears. When I think of them with love, my grief slowly disappears. When I start to change my thoughts from missing them with sorrow into a beautiful memory, I get strength until tomorrow. Then I start to feel them stronger in the shadows that are cast, and I know that our connection is not only in the past. To me, these thoughts do comfort and fill my heart with song, for through my earthly journey, they will travel right along.
Thank you. That's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I as I have been, kind of trying to just process through my own traumas, I have felt the strength from the other side, and it's been something that has really helped me a lot. And I'm turning into, when I think of these people now, it's not in the sadness, it's not in the victim mode, it's not in survivor's guilt so much anymore.
Hmm.
Now it's I'm properly, adequately feeling the grief and mourning and love and hope, and that's one of the big things. I do recovery and veteran advocacy. And one of the things that I encourage other people, just because I was so lost for
Hmm.
so long.
Right.
And so one of the things that I encourage people is, hey, feel the proper emotions. You don't have to feel guilt and shame. And I just was at a veteran cohort for the last week where they really highlighted on that. What is your responsibility of emotions?
Right.
Like guilt and shame, aren't as beneficial as what a lot of people think. But
Right.
feeling remorse and feeling grief and mourning, those are the appropriate ways to respond to losing people that we know.
I
So
think
that's something
more.
that I'm.
I think they're more productive and more helpful. It helps you to take
Yes.
a positive action versus just collapsing or self-destructing or taking destructive action. So yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that I did for so many years. Like my deployment was really, really rough. And I also had a lot of childhood trauma. And
Hmm.
for so many years, instead of actually grieving and mourning what I needed to, I turned inwards. And again, that victim mentality and beating myself up and hurting myself and getting angry with myself. And I didn't even realize that I had anger or fear or sadness.
Hmm.
All I knew was like, oh, I just want to drink and party and make myself feel better, and other addictions. I
Right.
I literally was fooling myself completely. And then, like, what little I didn't know, like, I would go to therapy, but I would talk to them about this over here so they wouldn't ask me about this over here. I was very selectively honest. And when I got sober, I realized that God can't heal the person I'm pretending to be, and neither can a doctor.
Right.
So,
It needs to have the genuine person, the real.
yeah. So I had to let go of a lot of the stuff that I was running to,
Hmm.
because I was running away from fear, anger, and trauma. And then I had to realize, okay, well, now I have to actually feel these things. And part of that is remembering those that I've lost. And that is a huge thing because for so long, anytime Memorial Day would come or Veterans Day or uh Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, any of these big times when you would
Mhm.
normally, think about the people that you deployed with or that you were in the military with or whatnot, I would just get drunk.
Right.
I would get completely and utterly drunk, and I didn't even know. I just thought that I was just enjoying my life, right?
Mhm.
I didn't realize that I was hiding until that first 4th of July when I got sober
Right.
and I heard the fireworks. Like I thought that PTSD was something that people just did and they were just making things up and looking for attention. Like,
Right.
I really genuinely was like in my mind, "Dude, get over it. It's not that bad. It's not that bad." I was fooling myself so bad. And so then that first 4th of July, when those fireworks hit and I was sober, I hit the ground just
Yeah.
crying. I just crying because it wasn't just the noise. It
Right.
was all the memories of the people that I lost while I was over there and since I've been back,
Right.
because there were so many different layers. And so anyways, if you are struggling with addictions, realize that there is a way to find peace. And if you are using your addictions to hide from the emotions, there are ways to process it and there are resources out there. And if you need somebody to help you find those resources, please reach out to me. That is what I do. This is one of the things that I love to do is help people find resources. But it is possible to have these memories and them not feel like they're gonna kill you anymore,
Right.
you know? So today, I'm going to, read a list of names, and I think that you guys have some photos for me that I can, reference.
I think, let's see, we had a video here, I think, that has um, it's a minute 31 seconds. I think it has some of your it includes some, both some names that I'm very familiar with and others I'm not. So I'm going
Okay.
to go ahead and go and run this video, and we'll go from there. It takes
Okay.
about a minute and a half. So were those included the names you were wanting to remember to honor today?
Yeah. So there was some names that I didn't know
Right.
and, a bunch of them that I do. So I thank you so much for doing that. That was really
You're
pretty.
welcome. You're welcome. So, you know, we got just a few seconds of the photo and a small synopsis there. Um, are there any that pop into your mind now that you want to go in a little bit more detail? Please do.
Yeah, so there's a few of them. So Aaron McClyman was one that was on there. Aaron was one that passed away during my deployment, and I actually had the amazing opportunity to interview her mom yesterday, and I'm
Wow.
gonna be sending you that interview. She
Thank
allowed
you.
me to record it for you.
Thank you so much.
And Erin is one that while we were deployed back in 2009, she went home on leave in December. And in January, her sister had gotten jumped at a bar,
Yeah.
and Erin jumped in. 5 women. 5 women. Erin jumped into that fight and saved her sister. And her sister was able to get away, but Erin got her neck broken.
Wow.
So for the next 2 months doing physical therapy and stuff, she actually fought to get back to Iraq. She wanted to be back with us.
Hmm.
And in March, she came back, and me and some mutual friends, because I didn't know Erin very well, but I knew her from mutual friends. I was a medic, and so I worked in Charlie Med, and she was in Bravo as a mechanic,
Okay.
and she fought to get back. And so that night we all were hanging out and laughing and joking. I just remember just her beautiful infectious smile and her laugh, and she was just so joyful to be back with us. She knew that she needed to be with us. And the next day she got sent to another fob or cob, I'm not sure which one, and she ended up getting hit by a mortar on her way to the DFAC, and she was gone. And it was really rough. It was really rough for a lot of us because she was very loved,
Yeah.
and I spoke with her mom, and her mom said that she was like that for everything. She jumped in head first. She followed her heart. She was very much, very very willing to jump into life head first, you
Yeah.
know. And we were so honored to get to know her. And the defect that had been hit, actually they changed their name to honor her, which was
Wow.
really really cool. And then we also have Todd Selge and Jordan Shea. Those were guys that I didn't know personally, but they were killed in a rollover accident with a striker.
Uh-huh.
And they were actually my first people that I had seen up close deceased.
Hmm.
And those were the ones that was early on in the deployment. And those are the ones that kind of really, for a long time, I'm not gonna say dishonored their memory, but I used their death as my excuse for a
Okay.
very long time. I
Hmm.
was I was very lost in my victim mentality, with, "Oh, poor me, pity me, this is what I experienced." And I'm so grateful that I've been able to process through some of this trauma to be able to realize, that there is honor in what happened, and that I don't need to be lost and sad and grieving for as long as I was, you know what
Right.
I mean? I can mourn them and I can honor them instead. And so I've been able to use that more as a I had this experience to honor them after they died,
Right. Right.
you know? There's also so those were the 3 big ones during my deployment. We lost a few other people, but I didn't know them. I wasn't really connected with them.
Right.
When we got back, though, as I said, there has been multiple people who have died since the deployment, and some of them were suicides, some of them were accidental death. There's some of them that we're not sure what happened,
Hmm.
possibility of murder. Anyways, I just want to read through a list of these names. Some of them I am super connected with, and some of them not. I'm not going to say which is which. And that's their family story to tell.
Right.
I will speak their names and if I know them or not. So Annabelle Chong, I called her Chong.
Hmm.
She was one of my best friends. She was she was just a sweet, sweet woman. And I still remember in my mind, she would come up to me and be like, "Slidey!" Like, that was my nickname that she gave me, and
Yes.
when she passed away, it was very hard. That one was that one still.
Right.
still, is my hardest because she's the one that I know the most.
Yeah.
And then we have Raymond Rivera. Rico was another one that I deployed with. He was a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And he has since passed away. And then we have Dustin Morrissey, and I was more close to his wife. His
Right.
wife was a good friend of mine. She was in my unit, and I knew him, but didn't know him quite as well. But he was a really good guy as well. And then we have Kai Draco Lamar Evans. Kai was another friend of mine in our unit. Marco Mastro Giovanni. I think I may have met him once or twice, but again, I'm reading these names. These are names of people from our unit that other people have informed me have passed away.
Sure.
So
Sure.
we have Kelsey Hott. She passed away very early on after we got back from the deployment. Robert Engelhard, John Carpenter, Raman, Jason Barrera, Stephen Greenwell, Eric Flores, Ryan McCormick, Tiana Avery Felder. I don't know her. She was in the deployment before me.
Okay.
And also Isla Rubalcava. And I just want to say something with Isla Rubalcava. Her brother right now is actually working to get a VA facility in El Paso, Texas, named after her. And he has sent a petition to sign. You can go to my Facebook page if you just look up Marie Slider Henriksen on Facebook, and you can sign the petition if you are willing to help support that. Another one that I was very close with was Steven Johnson. And then we have people that were not in my unit.
Okay.
When I first got sober, there was a man named Jeffrey Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
He was a veteran and he was in recovery, and he took me under his wings and helped me learn how to live sober. We would go work out together all the time, or we would just hang out and spend time together. He was just a really, really good man. And he passed away back in 2020.
Yeah.
And then just a couple honorable mentions. We have my grandpa who passed away when I was younger.
Yes.
And John Schroeder is his name. He was in the Army Air Corps
Okay.
for a long time. And then, of course, my dad, Timothy Slider.
Yeah.
And we are coming up on a year since he passed away.
Okay.
He passed away back in July last year. And he was in the Navy. And my dad was so proud of being in the Navy.
Yeah.
Like that was one of our big things. He was the one person, my grandpa was so young when I passed away. My dad is the only other person that was in the military in my family. And so that was something special that we had. And
Right.
dad would tell me stories, and he was a code breaker that worked on a ship, and at one point he actually worked in Washington with the NSA for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just so proud of his military service, and he would wear the Navy hats all the time. I think I bought him like 10 of them because he just loved them. But anyways, that is my list of my squad of angels that I have, that were either connected with me, or that my friends knew, or that I'm related to, and I am always completely and utterly full of love and respect for all of them, no matter how they died.
Right.
Because they all did their service, and they all did what they felt was right. And whether they chose to take their life or not, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They were doing the best that they could,
Absolutely. We had this conversation before about that, and that suicide and suicidal ideation are things that we don't talk enough about. I think because we're all uncomfortable with it, we don't really know how to help somebody, because so many of us, me included, For many, many years, all of my military service, I had suicidal ideation and depression, and I hid it successfully from everybody. So, but I think the more we talk about it, the better people can understand it and be there for folks who are uh, willing to disclose what's going on and reach out for help. Um,
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I do what I do.
hmm
Is I share my message because yeah, same here. I've been suicidal off and on, especially like there really has been stuff since I was a child,
right.
but after the military, it was very bad. And one of the things that I didn't even realize how suicidal I was. Like
hmm
when I got sober, I started realizing how many accidents I would imagine in the road. Like, oh, if I just turn my car just slightly,
Yeah.
this person could T-bone me, or if I turn this way, I could go over this middle thing and then someone could hit me head on. I would imagine all of these accidents going on. Like I had these intrusive thoughts that were coming, or the you're not worth it, or you're a victim, there there's a lot of layers that I have learned that are going on internally for me. I have just me, my fears, my sadness, my grief that turns inwards, my trauma that turns inwards. And then I have the layer of my addictions and the addictions are constantly like, "Oh, you need me, you need me. You can't do this on your own." But then you also have the messages from the asshole downstairs is what I like to call them, right? You have the external messages that are coming in as well. Whatever you want to call it, negativity in the world or Satan or
Right.
demons or evil or whatever you want to call it, we have this external force that's also coming inside. And so one of the big things that I have, and this goes into this next poem, this last poem that I'm going to read, right? Is one of the biggest things that I have learned is to differentiate the messages that are coming from the other side.
Right.
I said that I'm a firm believer that I have my squad of angels, but you also have this negative messaging. And so yeah, so I'm going to read this other one for you. And this is kind of my journey of learning how to listen to the right messages.
Right.
Messages from the other side, the place where all spirits reside, resonates so deep within and often come from my kin. Some come from friends long gone, or others who passed, some I've done wrong. I tend to get lost reminiscing, finding myself endlessly listing all the wrongs in my past, words not said or harsh ones cast. When I feel self condemnation, I make the choice of resignation. I know that message very well. That voice wants me to live in hell. Making the choice to refocus my mind, I start thinking of words that are kind. I listen to spirits speaking to me who genuinely want to be free. The ones that don't think I am damned for the hurts caused by my hand. They offer opportunities to make amends through community. Then I think of those in need who may need me to plant a seed, one of hope and recovery as they go through self discovery. I cannot change my past choices. When I help others, God rejoices. So do the spirits round about. I can almost hear them shout, with Christ, they are holding me. They lift me high so I can see above the clouds of blame and shame, so I'm not blinded by the pain. As I am healing day by day, I share with others how I found a way to heal from my list of trauma and overcome my life of drama. Living amends to those still around, I open my heart so love can abound. I do my best to take better actions and not get lost in overreactions. As I do this, the message gets louder that the other side couldn't be prouder. My squad of angels holds me tighter. The weight of my past keeps getting lighter. I'm no longer bound by mistakes I have made, for at Christ's feet they have been laid. I hope one day I no longer fight the messages I know are right, the ones that bring internal peace. for then self-punishment may finally cease.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's that's where can people find uh, your poetry? Do you have that someplace that folks can go to?
Yeah, so if you go to sliderbabe.com, you can get a link to all of my socials, and on YouTube and Facebook, I've recorded a bunch of my poems. There's also right underneath my picture on sliderbabe.com is a little world. And on that little world, you can go to another website that has most of my poetry online.
Okay.
I also have a book of poetry that Squad of Angels is in the book of poetry,
Okay.
and you can buy it on your own, but I'm actually working to get that book into jails, institutions, recovery centers,
Mhm.
into nonprofits. If you're interested in donating, there is an option to buy 5 for 60, and 4 of them will go into a facility and 1 of them will go to you. So if you are interested in a nonprofit partnership to spread the message of hope to others so people know that there is a possibility to find peace, that you don't have to run to the addictions, that you don't have to run to the negativity, that you can find peace and hope
Amen.
in the pain.
Amen. So yes, we'll talk later. And I certainly anticipate that we will be working more closely together in the future on a variety of things here. But for anybody listening now or will watch a replay of this in the future, yes, please go to sliderbabe.com and connect here with Marie and support what she's doing there. I know we've got about 8 minutes left before you have to leave us. Let's make the most of this here. So yeah, I'm glad that we connected. What was that, 3 or 4 weeks ago? We had attempted to get on your program here back last fall, but there were some other things going on that kind of delayed that. But I'm glad that the timing worked out. And
Well,
so,
I'm glad that you brought that up. So I just want to let people know one of the reasons why we weren't able to make it work was in the fall winter timeframe. I started not doing very well. My dad passed away last year, and even though I had been doing a lot of work to make myself feel better and to work through things, it triggered a lot of stuff from my childhood.
right.
And at night, or at almost 9 years sober, I ended up in the psych unit again, and
Hmm.
then in January, I did a PTSD program. And so
Right.
that's the reason why we had to reschedule Dennis. And so the one thing that I will say for everybody, just know that you don't have to do this stuff on your own. And
Right.
it's not going to be, and let's heal everything all at once. It's going to come in layers.
Right.
And as you're working through it, you can find peace in it, you
Right.
know?
I think it's important for folks who are watching this to realize that what you're sharing today and what I think others will be sharing later on is part of that cost, part of that price that's paid when when we took our took the oath, raised our right hand and were sworn in to join the service. We knew, at least at some part, that we might be exposed to something that could kill us, and we were doing that voluntarily. Um, I think most of us, I'm thinking back to my own service, that's like there wasn't there wasn't a day that I can remember that says this is the day I'm going to die. But there was always that thought that something could happen, and my life would be forfeit, and I was okay with that. At least I was. I don't know if everybody is, but I mean, I was okay with that. But I wasn't thinking at that time really of what other impact that would have on the people around me, and that there is an impact. There is an impact when we leave, no matter how we leave. But traumatically, abruptly, whether at the hands of an enemy, like your friend who was killed in a mortar attack, whether it's through accidents, vehicular accidents, whether it's through self harm, there's an impact, and there's a loss, and it's okay to acknowledge that, and it's important to talk about it, because otherwise, what, it just festers inside, right? So let's not let it fester inside. Thank you for being vulnerable and talking about this, Marie. And I'm hopeful that through this, some of the folks that you mentioned, those families will want to have their loved one's story told in more detail. Just a sort of reminder that what we do is we will work with that family, and we will research that person's life as deeply as we can. Um, do interviews in depth, produce a written biography, and when we have the right resources together, we'll produce video documentaries as well. But and tell that story with honor and dignity, and whatever it is. I mean, whatever it is, the truth is the truth, and that's what we're about, is telling the truth. So
Well, I have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing, and I'm so honored that you asked me to come on here and to be able to speak my truth and speak the names, because speaking the names and our truth is the way that we honor those that have passed.
absolutely. So yeah, I was hoping that our mutual friend Colonel Randy Schwally would be on by now, so you get a chance to touch base there. I know you said that you met him out there in Utah, and he was kind of promoting his book that he wrote. I don't know if he told he told me recently that he's come up with I think a second edition.
Awesome.
He's added some content to that, so I'm looking forward to getting a copy myself and reading that. But I'm sure he'll be, when he does join us, he'll be talking about that. So we've got.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I met him last year. I can't remember where, but I met him last year, and he was pushing his mom in a wheelchair. And at that point, so I have a genetic condition where my joints and stuff are degenerating, and so when I'm at the airport and stuff, I have to use a wheelchair, and I've only done it a couple times, and I was feeling uncomfortable, but he pushed his mom right next to me, and she was in a wheelchair, and we just got to talking, and I just felt connected, and I felt seen, and I felt accepted. And
Yeah.
then Brandy started chatting, and we just got into this amazing conversation about both of us being in the military and our books and stuff like that. It was just a really cool conversation.
Yes, his mother Pat is awesome. I love her too. So had the chance to spend some time with him. Pretty much every time that I've driven through the western United States, I'll make a stop over there. And he lived in Park City for a while, and I lived in Immigration Canyon. So it's been about a year and a half since I've last been able to be out there. But they're great people.
Well, I'm excited that you're going to have him on your show. He's got a really good story.
Yes, he does. He does. And I appreciate your time. I know you've got other things you got to get to. I guess we got 1 minute before you gotta hop off. And any last thoughts that you have that you want to share today?
Again, I thank you so much. And I'll just say, please honor the people that you have lost, but don't honor them with your suicide.
Right.
Don't honor them with being stuck and lost. If you are struggling, please reach out. Call 988 or call me. Reach out to me. Sliderbabe.com. You can access me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Reach out to me if you need to. Please keep going. Keep their honor of keep their memory alive, and stay here
Yeah.
and keep fighting and advocate for others and be there. You are worth being here. Your voice matters. So please use your voice, find your voice, reach out for help.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Marie. God bless you. And I'm going to let you go, because I know we're up at that time you said you had a hard stop at.
Yes.
Look forward to hearing about how the rest of your day goes the next time that we chat. You're awesome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. May you all find peace today.
Amen.
Have a good one.
Bye. All right. Well, thank you again to Marie. Awesome guest here today. And this is what we want our Memorial Day live stream to be, is to have guests on that are going to talk about the ones that they knew, that they lost, that paid the ultimate price. Our next guest is not in the studio yet, so I'm going to do something here. I'm going to talk. We've got a video here where one of the family members was talking about the experience of working with us. We do have one story published. We do not have the funds to do video yet, so that piece is still waiting. But I'm going to play Jen's.
I full trust in you guys. Part of why I wanted to work with you, Dennis, and the nonprofit is because I knew early on that this was going to be, excuse me, this is going to be emotionally heavy. And for any Gold Star family out there that wants to document your story, it really helps to have a third party. You know, it really helps to have a third party that is committed to getting, you know, your fallen hero story done from beginning, middle, and end. Because it's very easy to, I remember going through some of the footage. Like, I think you had shared the archive where I could watch my dad's memorial service back in Yokosuka. Mm-hmm. And I never watched that before. And I remember I cried that whole afternoon. Like, I dedicated a whole afternoon to just crying, because I didn't know what to expect. And you know, and I think that the beauty of working with you guys was you were able to take an objective view. You know, you were there to see the whole journey through. You know, like, of course you care enough, but you also are detached to keep it going forward. You can see the bigger picture of getting this project done. So that's what I would encourage for Gold Star families, and also to anyone that wants to support what Dennis and his team is doing is, you know, we may be part of why military Gold Star families cannot tell their story is because even right now, you know, like, I think I'm pretty charismatic, but even I'm choking up, right? Just thinking about the past. And I've already been, what is it? It's been like 25 years, you know, since I lost my dad, and those feelings can still come up for me. And so the reason why you guys are so important is to help us get our stories out. You know, we get, at least for me, like, I'm getting emotionally choked up, even trying to find the words, like, where to begin. So I'm just so grateful that your team was willing to, you know, and I know Keith did a lot of the heavy lifting with, you know, combing through all the things and crafting our story in a very cohesive way where you can it's just such an easy read. You can read my dad's book in like 2 hours and you just get the full picture, you know, and the 2 hours of reading that book doesn't do credit to, you know, the months or however long it took for him to write that book and hear our stories and empathize with us. And so it's important. The work you guys do is important because we can't tell our stories. You know, the fact that you guys exist and you worked really hard to get my dad's book done, and to see that you're already writing stories for other families, it just comes to like this is important. This does matter. And we are in such a very fortunate position. Like, I feel very blessed that I could carry this burden of carrying on my dad's story, my dad's legacy, like that. But we need help. You know, we need help. We need people like you, Dennis, and your team to pull those stories out of us, because we don't even think we should tell our stories. It's not even a thought. It's kind of, you got to keep on keeping on. You know, like, I think about my, you know, again, going back to my mom, she didn't think like, oh, we just lost dad, I need to tell this story. She's like, no, I need to raise 3 kids. Right. I need to raise 3 kids. I need to get them into a stable home. I need to get them to college, because that's what me and my husband wanted. You know, right. I need them to become adults and, like, you know, leave the nest. she doesn't, there's not a moment where she's going to stop to think, I need to document this, you know?
Right.
And so I feel very, blessed to be in a position to acknowledge the significance of our story. And then also to have had my sister who was ready. She was ready to go there. And it just all, the stars aligned in a sense when whoever introduced me to you, and you offered this opportunity, it was like, of course we need to do this because, mom's not going to do it because she's done enough. You know what I mean? And this is, and so it's really up to the kids. It's up to, like my dad's kids, which is us, to do this. And so I just wanted to share that and express my gratitude and the significance of what it means to, work with you, Dennis. And again, I can't thank you enough, you and Keith and the team, to work with my family.
All right, we're back. And we do have Colonel Randy Schwally backstage. Randy and I go back a lot of years, and so I'm very honored to introduce him to you. And without further ado, let's bring him into the studio. Hey, Randy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Oh, I've had that panicked wake up, so I'm in a different time zone. So yeah, it was just a little different.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're with us. I was hoping that you'd be able to come on, a little bit before you did, because we had our mutual friend Marie Slider Henriksen, who was with us, and so it would have been, I know she enjoyed telling the story of her meeting with you and your mom, Pat, and
that was kind of funny. I was just in the airport. I mean, just all of a sudden there was somebody. We started a conversation.
Right.
But well, gosh, I caught a little bit of the last one. And by the way, I don't know if this matters or not, but I mean, as she was showing pictures of the ceremony, I was there. So it was. I don't know if she knows that, or not that would necessarily matter, but
Right.
It was.
Well,
that was a good day, and certainly something worth your effort. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, we want to certainly want folks to know that we can honor their lost loved one in a similar fashion. But we want to talk today about people that we are not currently working with. Hear their stories as well. And I know that you've known a few, and would love to give you the opportunity. We have lots of time available. I don't want you to feel any. Well, I mean, we know each other a long time.
Yeah.
You know how we roll. So it's like whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. We'll welcome your input.
Well, I appreciate that. This is unscripted, so I'm sorry if it's a little jumbled, but I have a number of you and I've had this conversation before where, one of my concerns about following your protocol was to make sure that it was people, honoring people who have fallen while in uniform. And that's a smaller net. Then unfortunately, the longer we live, the more we know people who passed out of uniform and who had served.
Right.
I do have two. I'm sorry, my camera seems a little odd here. I haven't quite figured this out yet, but let's see if I can do this maybe a little bit better. There, that's maybe a little better.
There we go. Now we got the light from the window there.
Yeah, the flood, right? That doesn't. I haven't, like I said, I haven't mastered this yet. There, that's a little better. I have two people that I feel like are worth recognizing, and unfortunately, some of my information is a little incomplete on this. People who died in uniform that I knew, class of '85 at West Point. We had a young kid, and I don't even remember his first name, but his name was Lee, and they were driving back to West Point and swerved to miss a deer and hit a tree and killed him. And he was in uniform. Obviously, people don't realize at West Point you're considered legally on active duty, even though 1 minute of that experience doesn't count, which is a different issue. But that, tragic loss is tragic loss whenever it happens, and it happens in uniform. Here's a kid who got through his plebe year, and he was halfway through his second year. And unfortunately, I was just looking through my books to see if I could find a picture of him, and I can't find him. Right. So I know he's out there. Matter of fact, Gordon knew him well, much better than I did. I mean, I knew he was there, but I really didn't know anything else about him. But a tragic loss just before he even had a chance to start his life, much less his career.
Right.
And,
I'm struggling for words. The older I get, I apologize for that. But what I'm impressed about, and impressed is not really the right word in this context, but I guess what strikes me about this is that the fact that this is not the kind of loss that the public in general thinks about when we talk about Memorial Day, but I guarantee that his family does.
Oh yeah, loss is loss.
His family does, and the fact that you weren't able to find a photo of him also reinforces why I do what we do, why I started this. We had conversations before I even got started with this. I remember, but it's that as time goes by, unless we do something specific to capture those memories and to preserve them, then things fade. Photos that we used to be able to do a Google search for, you can't. They don't come up anymore because people aren't searching for them or whatever. So,
and it seems like I'll take a step into the unknown here, or the unrecognized. Exactly what you're saying. It seems like people who perish in training accidents, they still die. They still were in service, but for whatever reason, they weren't in the battlefield, or they weren't, in part of the war effort. And I hate to say it's easy to forget them, but it's easy to overlook them.
Right.
And I just heard something recently about a plane that crashed in training, some kind of training accident in the 40s, and they just found it.
Yeah.
And so this kid's been gone, for almost 80 years, right, or over 80 years, and still, has their. And I should have paid more attention to the story because it was pretty impressive. But they crashed somewhere in the United States during a training exercise, and that happens a lot more than people know. I mean, deaths do occur. But anyway, the point is that he was first. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture for him. If Gordon comes on, he would know a lot of the details. I don't. But we were all in the same company. Now, having said that, one of my classmates died in Afghanistan. Mike McMahon, he was already a lieutenant colonel. He was flying, and they turned up the wrong canyon, and he was in a fixed-wing aircraft, a Sherpa, and they crashed into the mountain, and he died. Yeah. His wife was then stationed at West Point, and she was a grad also, And so she'd been there. Matter of fact, I think she might have been the longest serving person on active duty in my class. Not sure, pretty close to that.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, I do have a picture of him. He was a great guy. Matter of fact, the story that I have with him is kind of anecdotal. Let's see if I can show you this. It's the one down here in the corner. His name is Mike McMahon.
Okay.
That's him. And
You're on
anyway, we have a plebe parent weekend during our plebe year, and it's where everybody else is on spring break and we run the academy. So our plebe class took over. And Mike and I, for whatever reason, I don't remember why, but we were playing racquetball. And matter of fact, it was, I'm left-handed and he was right-handed. For some reason we got paired up. And he was a friend, a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, I went to hit the ball and I smacked him across his forearm, his right forearm, like right across here. And it immediately whelped up and I thought I broke it. And I felt so bad that here's a good friend and I smacked the hell out of him with his racket. And luckily it wasn't broken. He was okay. But he took it in stride and everything was fine. But anyway, he was a tremendous guy and obviously was in Afghanistan and was unfortunately part of an accident, not because of ground fire or anything like that. But we lost a good one that day. And I think he's buried at West Point, if I'm not mistaken. Now, along with him and the ones that come to mind, I have a number of friends who've passed out of uniform.
That's fine, Randy. Today, this is the floor is yours. Marie had a number of names that included folks who passed while in and after their active service. So,
well, I'll just run down a list of a few, and unfortunately, I've started making a habit of collecting their funeral flyers.
Right.
The one recently was Craig Chipman, and he was in my unit. Came back. We were in Iraq together in 1991, and he's been battling Parkinson's. I couldn't even tell you, more than 2 decades. Mm-hmm. And he was born in 1957, and just there weren't even any family at his funeral. There were 12 of us.
Wow.
And we were mostly from the unit. I think there was a girlfriend, but Craig was just an easygoing guy and just was part of the guys who carried the load. He just was that kind of guy. But unfortunately, we didn't even have a flyer for him, but nonetheless, his service is worth recognizing, and he was one of the 53 that we took with us. There's some others here that I just want to run down. One of my best friends from West Point, Kyle Ray, and I don't have a picture of him here. I had some others, but this is his flyer.
Right.
It looks backwards on my screen. I don't know if it is.
It looked perfect for us. So.
Okay. Anyway, he battled cancer for 10 years. And he made a comment to me the last time I saw him. He said, I've finally come to the realization that this may not kill me, but I'm going to die with it. And then it killed him. It was a rare kind of cancer. He was having it treated in Houston and never made it back to Florida where he and his wife live. And ironically, he was, I'm 2 days older than him. I used to razz him about this, but he was a class ahead of me at West Point. So he got in and I didn't. So he got into the class of 84. I was the class of 85 and he lived in Marianna, Florida. So we were only about maybe an hour and a half apart. And then Miriam, his wife, was a class of 86. And so we three were all in the same company and she was from Miami.
Right.
And anyway, I served. I knew him in armor. We were both in armor together. I knew him both in aviation. We both were at Fort Rucker at the same time. And ironically, when we were in Iraq, a lot of my information came from him because he was with an attack battalion where I was with a medical unit. And this, nobody likes to tell the medical people anything.
You're right.
And so I would bribe him with good food because we always had better food. So he'd come over and have dinner, and then I'd have him talk to my officers so we'd know what was going on. And that was so crazy. This is a side note, but in those days, I remember talking to the warfighters who were friends, and I'd say, look, our information system is not very good. Can you tell us what's going on? And they'd say, well, it's classified. And I said, well, who do you think I'm going to tell? We're on the same side, and it was that kind of crazy comments. And then I'll never forget this.
And it wasn't like you didn't have a security clearance yourself. Yeah.
Right. We're in the same army out in the middle of the desert. Like there's nobody there anyway. But I remember saying to him, well, what are we supposed to do? And their comment was, well, when you see us move, follow us. What a stupid plan. I wish I would have, recorded that better. Yeah. But it was the idea that Kyle was one of the few people that I could rely on, who was always there. And, he was a good friend. I mean, that relationship bonded, way back in 1982, I guess it was. Wow. But yeah, when Miriam ended up getting out, but she served in the Department of the Army as a civilian. Matter of fact, I think she might have made SES. I'm not really sure. But Kyle, served out his time. He retired as a major, and then they lived in South Florida for a while. But he found he had some kind of a stomach cancer that he fought that was, for 10 years, it always sounded to me like it was kind of annoying. It wasn't necessarily life-threatening, but it was very rare.
Right.
And then the last time, when it took him, the treatment finally stopped working. And so whatever they had been using, and they took a bunch of tumors out of his stomach, and it was pretty rough. But there again, that's just part of life. But he gave the better part of his life for service. Another West Point not classmate. He was 2 years ahead of me. A guy named Bob Massey, and there's a lesson here. That's Bob.
Yes.
I went to his funeral in St. Louis. He was feeling bad, had chest pain, and he told his kids about it. And he said that he'd go to the hospital the next morning, and he died that night. He died in his sleep. He's buried at the National Cemetery in St. Louis, and there's a name for it, or south of St. Louis. And I can't remember the name of it, but I was impressed. It's a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, now I've been to many of the national cemeteries. Craig was in just outside of West Palm Beach, Florida. Bob was south of St. Louis. The next one I'm going to tell you about was in Tallahassee, Florida, which ironically I was there visiting family. Right. But my point is that they do a really nice job of keeping those up.
They do. I know that my father, who's still with us, it already has a plot assigned for him at the National Cemetery in Washington State because because my mother passed 17 years ago, and so she's buried there, and he'll be buried with her whenever that time comes. So yes, I'm very familiar with them, and yes, we want to let those that may not know that the National Cemetery Service does an outstanding job.
They do, and really unrecognized.
Right.
I remember one of my assignments was at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, in San Antonio, and we were right next door to the cemetery. So I arranged one day we went over there just to have a tour, and they're running out of space there, and so they're actually not only having to put them real close together, they're literally almost like side by side, right. But now they've got a top bunk, bottom bunk. And so I don't know if you didn't like the person who either is, above you or below you, but they're double stacking them. They recently got a land grant, so they got a little bit more land, but they're still pretty small compared to some of the others, especially. Right. And then, of course, they have the little containers for the cremated remains. Yeah, cremains. And my dad is in National Cemetery in Portland. And so, matter of fact, he's there, his dad's there, and his great uncle was there. There's a story there too. Mm-hmm. Long story, but the reason I went into service is because my dad was a Marine, And apparently he was a really good Marine because he made Lance Corporal 3 times. So, he'd be glad I'm telling this story, I'm sure. But he's there. He did get an honorable discharge, even though he got busted, at least 3 times. But he was in during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then his dad was in the Army, and we've talked about that before. My granddad was a cook in the Army in World War One, and he is both of them are buried in Portland, Oregon. And then I have the reason that my dad enlisted in the Marine Corps because of his great uncle, who's also buried in the exact same cemetery. So they're all, you can see if you stand at one, you can see where the other 2 are.
Right.
But the reason and I don't even have a name other than his last name is Bilodeau. He enlisted, he was on the island hopping in World War II, and was on Tarawa, which is the bloodiest battle I think the Marine Corps has ever fought, and was a hero in World War II. Came home, became a drunk, and then they called him back immediately for the Inchon invasion, and so he came back, and he was part of the Inchon invasion and was a hero, and came home and became a drunk. And it was like his calling in life was, to be a good Marine, and he was. But he's the reason my dad enlisted in the Marine Corps. My dad's the reason that I even joined the Army at all, the reason I even considered military service. So it was kind of interesting how those 3 were connected. And the next one I have is Sergeant Major Bobby Whaley. And I ended up going to his funeral almost by accident when I was in Tallahassee, Florida. He was from a little town towards Perry. It wasn't even on the map. I can't even remember the name of it. But really an incredible job. He was a door gunner in Vietnam, and then he was one of the people that maintained our aircraft as a civilian when we came back from the Gulf War, and actually before we went. He's the reason our aircraft, all 6 of our aircraft were from Vietnam. He rebuilt them piece by piece.
Wow.
And so it was his effort that really made me feel, I didn't even know him at the time when we were in Iraq. I met him when we got back. But he's the reason that our aircraft were in such incredible condition. We even had one of our active duty majors came up to our commander and said, "Where did you guys get these new Hueys?" The Army hasn't had a new Huey since like 1972. I mean, that was or 74, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, he took it upon himself and really took a lot of pride in rebuilding our aircraft and making them safe, and they were. So very, very thankful for that. And I know I'm sure there's a much, much longer list, but the one that I'm really leading up to is Cindy McHugh, and I do have her picture.
Yes.
And her name was Concha. When I knew her, she was in our unit in Iraq, and I'm okay saying that she met your standard because she left the Army and she was a cop. So she was a cop for 14 years, and a very dear friend. That I became friends with her much, much better when we came back. And she and her husband would come out and ski. And I live in Utah, for those people who don't know. But incredibly talented, incredibly smart, fun to be with, but had demons. And they weren't just from the Army; they were from the police force as well. And unfortunately, 10 years ago, she shot herself. And so it was, it's tough when, when people, and I know, I mean, she wanted to uphold, to be strong. She was strong, but obviously at a moment of weakness, and we all have those, it's tough. And I have a good friend of mine now who is from Miami-Dade. She was from Sunrise, Florida. She was a cop in Sunrise, which is in Broward County down in South Florida, and right across the county line in Dade County. Her husband worked there, but also a good friend of mine now is from there, and he lives up here, and he's struggling with some health issues, and I would hate to say alcoholism. I won't mention his name, but it just seems like people who serve, they do run out of gas. And we got to figure out a way to help them, to reach out to them. And he even told me that, many of his friends have done that. And that seems to be a common way out. And I don't know if you've heard this statistic, but typically people who serve last about 5 years after they take the uniform off. And luckily, you and I, my friend, have
We're
better than that.
we're at the far end of that.
Yeah. But I think part of it is to have a mission, and your mission is to run this, and really mine, what I'm leading up to. Hang on just a second. Mine has been to write, and I did. There's my book, and yeah, I'm pushing it. Sorry about that.
Absolutely, please do.
I will tell you this. Even it's self-published. It's on Amazon. It's called The Warrior's Piece. Cindy was really what drove me to write it, and the more I wrote it, the more I realized there was a need for what I've been able to say in there. But now it was 4 years ago, and I started the process. I've published. I still haven't broken even, which isn't a big surprise. But I'm going to come out with a second edition because I feel like there were some pretty important, sensitive things that I didn't really put in the first version. I didn't really think about it. Here's the ironic part: is it's now with my editor.
Okay.
And so hopefully by the end of next month I'll be able to publish. It will be a second edition. What I decided to do is, since nobody seems to understand that picture, that's actually a helicopter you can't even see inside a sand dune. And
Right.
people who know me all thought that was skiing something. Well, it wasn't. And actually this picture, I don't know if you've played golf there or not, but that background picture is one that I took while I was playing golf at Mountain Dell Golf Course. So if you come back, we'll go play golf there, and I'll show you where I took the picture. But it was an interesting process to really dive into something I knew nothing about. And writing it was a big part of it. It took me over a year to write it, but then learning to publish was a whole different process. But nonetheless, my second edition, I've already been working on the book and the cover, and I'm going to put a camel on it just so that people be able to recognize that it's something that doesn't exist here. It must be something to go to the desert.
Maybe Marie has some connections that can help you with the graphics there and make it stand out a little bit more to do what you want. I mean, we invested a fair amount in the cover for our first book, just because it's like they say, don't judge a book by its cover, because everybody does.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting path. I will say that. The more, especially the feedback, and I've self-published on Amazon. It's also on Barnes & Noble, but I've had no luck with Barnes & Noble at all. They've been almost worthless to me. Matter of fact, they recently sent me something. I've never sold a single book on their platform, not one. I've contacted 3 different Barnes & Nobles. None of them are going to have an author signing. They're not interested. It's just almost a dead end. And I don't know if you've seen this, but recently they sent me something and said now their minimum sale price is $15.
Okay.
Well, mine wasn't. I mean, and I have to admit, part of writing is not to make any money. Hell, I'd just like to break even, but it's just to get it out there.
Right.
And they insisted that I raise it to $15. So I changed that part of it and went right back to nothing.
Right.
So that's been kind of a disappointment, but really the other, I have to admit, and I'm going to bitch a little here, this disappointment I've had with marketing this thing is that everybody wants something even to help. Right. And I won't say which ones, but I belong to a couple of different alumni associations. One of them in particular wanted $600 just to put it in along with all their other authors.
Right.
And it's like, I haven't even made $600. I mean, it's like, so that's been disappointing. It's like everybody wants to make money off of this.
It's a struggle. I agree. Mm-hmm. And there's, from my perspective, it's like I'm almost 100% certain that every book sale we've had has not come because of the marketing efforts of the various platforms that ours are on, but because people have heard about it from me or somebody else that we're connected with, and they go to our website, and then they go from there to the there's a number of different places that they can go to. But there are ways that, and we can talk about it later. There's a free service that lets you kind of let people know where to buy it. So it would direct them to whatever ones that's the most appropriate. Gives you, doesn't take as much of a cut. Gives you the most share. So whatever your preferred platform is, can direct them there. So,
well, I can tell you another frustration I've had is, even though that Amazon is what I've been working through, it's frustrating that if you do a search on Amazon and you simply put in, even in quotations, if you put the Warrior's Peace, it won't come up.
Yeah.
You've got to put my name on it.
Yeah.
And so, and that to me is ridiculous. It's like, this is the platform that I'm using and they profit from.
Right.
You would think that they would help in this, at least in their search engine. But
you would think so, but no, they don't.
So anyway, that's, and there again, I mean, I saw something from them about, of course, pay something to have more coverage. Now, whether that means you come up quicker on your search engine, I don't know. But I always tell people, if you're looking for it on Amazon, you got to put the title, but also put my name.
Right.
And that'll bring it up right away.
So the Warrior's Peace and Randy Schwalia.
I should have changed my name on there. It's
okay.
Yes, I go by Randy, but it's Randall, Randal, 1L. My mom didn't believe in double letters. I've been living with that my whole life. Kind of a funny story on that too. My sister's name is Renee Michelle, which in both cases, the female version, Renee would have 2 E's at the end and Michelle would have 2 L's. Well, my mom didn't do that. So it's Renee with the male spelling with 1 E, and then Michelle with the male spelling of 1 L. So in French, that's both of them are male names. And so I guess when it comes down to it, at least I fared better than my sister did.
There you go.
But anyway, so that's at least the top of the list that I have. And I'm Memorial Day is kind of always it's a somber day for those of us who've worn a uniform because we understand the meaning. There isn't a lot of understanding about it outside service. And I get that. It's more out of my opinion, it's more out of ignorance, not out of intention. And so I don't get angry. I don't, get upset when people, are looking forward to
happy Memorial Day. No, sorry.
Yeah, looking for a day off or car sales or, grilling hot dogs or some damn thing, but anyway, it's, I'm glad it's there. And as a matter of fact, when people, wish Memorial Day, I said, well, my first comment is, and I'm a little snarky about this, but it's like, well, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Thanks. I don't think that's what you meant. I guess we need some smart asses.
Yeah. So maybe there'll be a few folks that watch this that say, okay, well, now I know to say something different. So,
what's funny is, having gone through this process, it's really ignited something that, and when you feel like you have a calling, I feel like there are at least 2 other books that I feel like I'd like to write. And one of them kind of deals with things like this, but it's more from a military perspective. One of them is when did the wrong side win? Mm-hmm. And that's a judgment call, but I bet you I could find something 5,000 years old and I'd still make somebody angry. And so I don't know if I'm really ready to take that on yet, but in my continued studies, there's so much out there, man. I mean, there are things that I'm still learning about that I had absolutely no idea. Last night I saw something on the Battle of the Alps between the French and the Italians.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of it. I mean, this has been my life. I wore a uniform for 32 years.
Right.
There's still things that I have no knowledge of, and how many people died in those things that we don't even know about.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's been said. I remember people saying it most of my life, and it's true. Is that the longer I live, the more I study, the more I recognize how very little I actually know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and things that can shape your own thoughts. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, situations that you read about incredible heroism or incredible bad luck. I mean,
Right.
there's plenty of that too. But yeah, ingenuity and individual effort that unless you have a reason to know, you wouldn't.
Right.
And so that's why I think not only is today important, but what you're doing is important.
It's important. I'm looking forward to, you know, we'll have another conversation offline from this, but looking forward to encouraging you to continue writing, Randy. I think that's important, regardless of the commercialism side of things. It's like, I think there's value in being able to crystallize your thinking and your thoughts and pass that on to somebody else. And you know, I've been an advocate and a fan of yours with your first book. Definitely looking forward to getting the second edition when that comes out, and you know, whatever way I can aid or assist with any future writing that you
Appreciate that.
will be doing. You will be doing this.
It's something that I've found has had much more meaning to me than I thought it would.
Right.
And you know, recognizing and I will say this. I mean, I feel like all I'm doing is plugging the book. I'm sorry about that, but one of the things that come out is that when I read the reviews on Amazon, that it seems to mean more to the family members than it does sometimes even to the service members. Although I had somebody say, and this was an incredible compliment. He said, "I felt like you were ghostwriting my story."
Wow.
I mean, that's an incredible compliment to me.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, but I mean, one family member in particular, the wife of someone that I flew with, she kind of said, "Oh, that's the way why you guys are the way you are." You know, it's like, well, yeah. But again, from her perspective, that was a real eye opener, and it meant to be a compliment, and that's the way I took it. But
good.
I will say this: I've been a little surprised at how I didn't realize how fragile my ego could be. You know, I haven't had the dart yet where somebody just says this was a complete waste of time, and you know.
Refund. I demand a refund.
Yeah, right. And it's like, yeah, I'll give you your money back if you ever have that. And I mean, you know, but I was pretty sensitive to, you know, to when that was going to come from left field, but so far it hasn't. So
good. I'm glad. But yeah, it's like after it was like, I really thought I was had a humble heart and spirit until I was going through some things that really humbled me.
oh yeah.
And I realized, oh gosh, I was kind of prideful about this and that and the other thing. But today is really what, you know, and I appreciate you sharing those names and those pictures when you had them, and the piece of the story that you have for them. And I do hope that more folks will be doing things like this and sharing the stories of those that they know and they love. And hopefully we have more folks that want to capture it all. I mean, because you had a piece of it, but somebody else has another piece, a spouse, a sibling, you know, somebody they went to school with before they joined the military. Those pieces of the story are fragmented. Really, that's where I see the issue being, and that was why we had I think the success that we had with telling Afonso Abdel Amos's story is the fact that by bringing us in, it created a different dynamic, and it allowed those adults that were kind of, you know, saying, oh, well, you know, it's all water under the bridge, etc., to say, oh, well, okay, maybe we should tell his story. And by bringing all of those elements together, then we had, you know, 20 hours worth of interviews that we had, and another 20 some hours of family videos, and a couple of hours of Navy videos, and then we had all the documents that we got from the Navy, etc. I mean, Keith Hayden, I haven't mentioned him before here today yet, but Keith is awesome. And, I kudos to him, and, to anyone that can bring all this stuff together, make a sense out of that narrative, and be able to write and tell that story. So,
Sure.
That's, an awesome thing. And we wouldn't have been able to do it without him. So, anyway, for families and friends of folks who have your own fallen that you wish to honor. I mean, certainly, we still have time today. If you want to hop on, you can do so. But if you want to have something that can be produced, takes sometimes years to get this done. But if you want to have something that can last for generations, we hope, then please reach out to us.
And it does take effort to do that, and you want to be accurate. That's the other part.
Right.
Well, I mean, what's I do find interesting is while I was in Iraq, I kept a daily diary.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back and went to the Army War College, I actually got credit for writing it. And there were things. The only thing that I changed, I mean, I pretty much did it verbatim, but the only thing that I had to change, and this is a funny story, when I was in high school, I was a real nerd, and my friend and I became fluent. If you remember Lord of the Rings, they were both Elven and Dwarvish, and they were written languages. Well, we became fluent in those languages. And so in my diary, I had some classified information that the only way I could put it in there was to put it in Dwarvish. And now I'm looking at it thinking, what the hell is that? But it was kind of interesting how being a nerd finally paid off in some respect.
Yes.
But when I go back, but the point of this though is when I go back and look at it, not just the published part that I sent to the War College, and that's out there somewhere. But matter of fact, I think it even has a ISBN number, which kind of surprised me. But nonetheless, having gone back to my original text, and of course I had great eyesight, so the letters are really small, so I got to get it double glasses to read it now. But I remember like sitting in the aircraft writing, and I remember whenever I had a few minutes to write something, and when you go back and you read it, and you talk about things being raw. I mean, that was raw. I mean, I remember writing about things that I just experienced sitting in the cockpit writing. Mm-hmm. And it's just this little book that I have, and it's interesting. My point of that is it's interesting to go back and read the raw data, and then wondering, am I capturing those feelings? I mean, and this is as an author as well. I mean, people won't remember what you say. They barely remember what you do. They will never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And so if you can convey feeling, that's where memory seems to latch on.
Right.
And so my hat's off to you, because I feel like you did that on the USS Midway. I mean, there was feeling there, and that's what I've really tried to do with my book. So, but anyway, I guess that's the point of, when you're retired and supposed to be knowledgeable and a little bit more wise than we used to be.
Yes. At least a tiny bit.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Now, if we could just get some of that marketing genius that some folks have, and we can make things go so much better. But honestly, I think that Marie was talking about this when we first got started, and she was saying that it really is an element of faith to this. It's like sometimes it's not drawing a crowd of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Sometimes it's just the one. Sometimes if we have a message that we're putting out there, there may be just one person that needs to hear it, and it's going to mean something to them. It's going to make a difference in their lives. And I have to remind myself that too. This is not in my timing, and this is not for puffing me up or anything like that. This is
No,
about those families.
Yeah.
It's about those families. It's about those people who paid the ultimate price. It's about making certain that we can remember their names, that we can remember more than their names, like how, as you mentioned, how they made us feel.
Mhm.
You know, how did that, you know, what were the good times that you shared? What were the bad times that you shared? You know, that's the essence of telling that person's story. I mean, uh, when when I have some time to fill here on this, I've got the Military Times page up, where they have the short biography of basically everybody who's died in combat operations since or different engagements. So a lot of these are not combat losses, but that's.
You know, even that's amazing though, because if you think about it, I mean, technology hasn't existed to be able to capture that to that extreme. And how many people, you know, like as an example, you know, who's in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier? I mean, maybe someday they'll decide to figure out who it was.
Right.
But how many people unknown, like even in like unmarked graves in Normandy or you know any of the Pacific Islands? I mean, war was. You know, I don't know if I should venture into this, but one of the movies that touched me the most was the one with Jude Law, where he's a sniper, and it was the invasion of Stalingrad, the German invasion of Stalingrad.
Right.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about, but yeah, right. I don't remember.
But what struck me was that they had boxcars of soldiers. Nobody even had a name tag. I mean,
Right.
They barely had clothes that fit, and they were just thrown in waves, human waves.
Right.
And that's, I mean, war sucks, and that's how they did it and during that period of time. But what struck me was the anonymity of war.
Right.
And you know, when you put the true sense of service, when you don't have a personal identity, when there's not even a name tag, and you're just one of many who are trying to accomplish something, and meanwhile people around you continue to fall.
Right.
You know, that's I mean, that's a heavy thing to think about, but ego is not involved at that point. You know, survival is obviously, and being able to tell the story. But apparently that story, what little I've been able to discern, is actually kind of almost a loric legend in Russia. And it's an incredible story if you've never seen it. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the movie.
Right. I know I saw the movie. So yes, I mean they sent them out there without weapons, and basically they're to go pick up a weapon amongst the fallen that they find on the battlefield as they're moving forward. So yes,
that really happened. I mean, they gave every other guy 3 bullets.
Yeah.
And you know, like, what do you do with that? I mean, do you know, like, you're going into a meat grinder, you know, that's kind of the way that you feel. And there again, you know, like I think I have a long story. I have a friend who's really a fellow professor of my mother's. My mother was a professor at George Washington University, and this was a visiting professor from Smolensk, Russia. And she always loved the Dr. Zhivago movie. And, you know, his version of, you know, that's real history. He said, well, that was a very dark time in our history. And that was an incredible understatement. But World War II was unbelievably dark for the Soviet Russians. And you know, the numbers that they lost are, I mean, like, I think in that century, it's been estimated that they lost over 100 million people. How can you even comprehend that? I mean, that's a massive number. And here we're searching to recognize individuals.
Right.
Their entire society was decimated. I mean, you know, so my point though is that service is not unique to us. I'm glad we take the time to recognize it. There's, you know, and obviously I would be remiss if I didn't say this, but hopefully mankind will someday graduate to not having war, you know, pitting us against each other.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a friend yesterday on this very topic, and I think the challenge with that is that, you know, throughout history, the reason that I think that ancient writings speak truth to us today is that human nature has not changed. Human nature has not evolved much at all in the 4,000, 5,000 years of recorded history. And so the same things that were true back then are true today, and the same motives that drive people to do good, to do ill, to do whatever back then are true today. And really, we came from a very tribal society that was very protective of their own and very hostile towards the other. And so
untrusting. And it does seem like it's always over resources. And I get that it takes resources to survive. But instead of helping each other, we seem to want to take from each other. And that's a pretty basic human premise.
Yeah, there's jealousy. I mean, you take a look at individual families, and I get these news prompts on my phone pretty much all day, every day about some person within a family killing another person within the family, and it's like we can't seem to get to the point of being able to live at peace, even within our families. How, as a society, I think it's a worthwhile effort to strive towards being able to live at peace everywhere.
Because they're no different than we are. It's just that we're on different sides.
Right.
That goes back to even like in World War I, where on Christmas Eve, the Germans and the British came out and celebrated Christmas together. I mean, if you can do that, and then they go back to their foxholes and start shooting at each other again, I mean, it's kind of the process is ridiculous.
A bit of a challenge even for us that served, you and I, kind of put ourselves in that position where both of our grandfathers served in that war, because it's technology has changed, but then it's made it. This is not along this specific line, but I'm very much interested in seeing what writings and learnings come out of the ongoing struggle in Ukraine, because I think that's kind of pointing the direction in where future conflicts are going to go. But
I have no real in-depth knowledge of that situation, but I did see something recently that pointed out that conflict in that region specifically has been going on since like 700 AD.
Oh, right. I mean, but I'm just talking about how the technology has changed and how Russia, who had every reason to think, given the old, the most recent war before this, that they could just roll through there and take them in a matter of days or weeks, and 5 years later, and still going on. So, but yeah, I mean, war is, as many. Who was it that said war is hell? Sherman, was that it? They said that, or Grant? I forget. But
I think most people have said that. But
but I mean, the one that coined the term or the phrase that got publicized. And it really is. And I think that most folks, well, I don't know if most folks, but I know some folks think that those of us that served are all just gung-ho, wanting to, fight and kill and break things. It's like, I don't think that's true of most of us. I think that anyone that's seen any piece of it, or which I never saw any of it, but know about it and was there supporting the war effort in a different capacity, know that it is a horrible thing, and know that we want to do everything we can to avoid that. But we also know that it is our nation's leaders that have the responsibility to decide when and where we go, and we then follow and do the best to carry that out.
I think our construct needs to change. Clearly, I will tell you, I had one of those epiphany moments during my service. I was a war planner, and I went to Japan. This was over 25 years ago, and I remember we had interpreters with the Japanese army. And one night we decided, we were going to go out and go bowling and, have a night on the town in Tokyo, which I love Japan. That's a really neat experience. If you've never been, it's worth going. But I remember sitting there. In their culture, it's inappropriate. I don't know if I would say rude, but inappropriate to fill your own glass. And so it's everyone that you're with, it's their responsibility to fill your glass.
Okay.
And as we were doing this, I looked over and there was I think I was a captain or a major. I think it was a major at that point. But I remember there was a much older person who was in their army, a lieutenant. So he was a very junior officer, but clearly he was one of their NCOs that, like a sergeant,
right,
who had taken a commission and started his career on a different path.
Right.
And I remember looking at him, and this guy looked hardened. I mean, if you've seen the World War II movies, this guy was like, you're thinking he would be on the other side looking at you. And I remember he filled my glass, and I looked at him, and I thought, thank God we're drinking the same, drinking together as opposed to shooting at each other, which we had been doing at the time 60 years earlier.
Right.
But it was one of those realizations, like we are people, you are people, we're the same people. And even with the language barrier, I mean, it was fun to be out on the evening with them. I mean, they were fun, and we enjoyed each other's company, even without speaking the same language.
Right.
So my point is that connection can be there even with some barriers. Right. And the soldiers are not that different. They're just, they're just people. We are just people.
We are just people, and really kind of brings up something too that I know you and I have chatted about this, but the vision that I have for what we do is, yes, I want to provide this for the American nation and for the families of the fallen here within our country. But I want to expand it eventually, when we have the ability to do so, to our veterans, as you talked about. I mean, we've got a lot of people that survived the their time in service. At the end of their lives, it's like, I really think that we ought to memorialize them by providing this kind of service to them. I'd like to be able to expand this to first responder communities, because they put themselves in the line of danger every single day. I think that this is an international thing too, because as you were just describing, the soldiers in these other nations are there very similarly to us to do the bidding of their national leaders, to put themselves in danger for that cause, for their nation. And I know it may not be, and that's why I try and stay out of politics, because I will certainly make somebody mad if I were making political statements about it. But I think that this.
Yeah, we can stay out of the politics and stay on the human side. I agree.
Stay on the human side, because this is, something that I would like to see happen around the world, where people are able to memorialize in a real way their people who put themselves at risk for their society, wherever that is across the globe.
And I have to tell you this, I don't know if you know this part of the story, but my parents split up when I was very young, so I didn't know my dad when I was growing up. And I remember when the Vietnam Memorial was built in Washington, D.C., and I look at now, I don't even remember my perspective then. It seems like I was a little doubtful of whether it was a good idea or not, the way they designed it. Right. Having been there, I can tell you it absolutely is appropriate, and it was built exactly the way it promotes the feeling that people had during the Vietnam War, because I remember that. Mm-hmm. But the reason I went to it, and I think it was during my first or second year at West Point, I went there looking for my dad's name. Right. Because I knew, he'd been a Marine, and this story is worth hearing, I think. Come to find out many years later when I met him, he wasn't on the list, by the way. He wasn't on the
was out on the wall. Went there to look for him, couldn't find him.
Well, but many years later, when I was talking to him about it and I told him that story, he said that he was one signature short of going back in, and he had to go to a high school, and there was a major who was giving a speech somewhere, and I guess this was like in 1968 or something like that. But so the Vietnam War was just starting to spool up, but the signature that he needed was from this Marine major. And he said when he heard the guy's tone and he said everything that he hated about the Marine Corps came back. And so he walked away, but he always felt guilty about not going back in. The rest of the story, though, is he told me that there was another guy that was doing the same thing. Well,
Right.
when that guy re-enlisted, was on a plane back to Vietnam, landed in Vietnam, was on a truck. The truck hit a landmine and was killed.
Wow.
So he hadn't been in country 2 hours and he
Right.
was killed. And I just told my dad, I said, well, quite frankly, I'm just glad you didn't do that because I wouldn't have known you.
Right.
I mean, all of those things would have been missed opportunities, but you never know. You just never know when it's your time or if you're involved in some kind of a conflict,
Right.
what the end result would be. But the point of this, though, is that I having experienced the Vietnam Wall, thinking that my dad's name was on it, there's something about acknowledging the individual sacrifices especially when you either knew them or you're related to them. And
Right.
the number of people that I've seen, 3 tours in the Pentagon, I've been there, but they would take the piece of paper and then they would use chalk or some kind of marker
Right.
to get the imprint. That's a way of remembering them. It's a way of memorializing them. And I understand there's even part of the Smithsonian where people come and leave stuff and they collect it up every day.
Mhm.
And so there's actually a museum of stuff that people have left.
Right.
So, that alone, but that tells you that there's emotion driven connection with the individuals and the people that are
Right.
represented on that wall, and just how important that is.
It is. And I would say too, I don't know. I mean, when you were at Fort Knox, when we were there together, were you aware that they had a replica of the Vietnam Memorial Wall there in Elizabethtown? So
Yeah.
okay. See, I've been there, and yeah, it's just as impressive. And they have the exact same stuff there to be able to find the names, where they're at, which panel. They've got the paper, and they use a soft graphite pencil, so you can do that with that. So I did that for.
Remember, I mean, you and I have kind of a unique experience because we're old enough to remember
Right.
the sentiment during Vietnam. I mean, people didn't just hate the war. That was the one uniting thing that people seem to all agree on, is we shouldn't be in that war. But I remember, and I'm sure you do, was the angst and the not just distrust, but almost hatred towards those in uniform.
Right.
And
yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say for me, I graduated from high school in '74. And I was in the Sea Cadets in high school, so hair was cut shorter. And I mean, at the time, I didn't take it as a joke. I'm giving them grace now, but there were guys that I knew in my all boys high school that when they knew I was headed off to college on an ROTC scholarship, they called me baby killer. I hadn't even been over there. It wasn't going to be over in anything. The war was coming to an end. But it's maybe thoughtless things that people said. When I was at my first, I went to 2 colleges. I guess my whole life has been a series of persistence through stumbles and failures.
that wagon.
So I went to UCLA at first, and they had protests before there, and they had, I guess, firebombed the ROTC building at one time, but all that was repaired. But again, ROTC, short haircut in an era where all the guys had long hair. They were not actively hostile. We were just non-entities. And it's like you were ignored. Walk past. So the only social contacts I really had during those 2 years were my fellow ROTC students. And it was, I really did see a big change in the 80s where that turned around in the public's eye, and it reminds me that, you know, attitudes can change. Attitudes
Yeah,
can
they
change.
can. Well, and I think it was a sense that people realized you can hate the war and not hate the warrior.
Right,
There's a big
right.
difference there. And I had a similar experience. I was in the marching band the whole time I was in high school. So marching in parades, there was like you'd watch the people's reaction to the band, and
Right.
they'd all mostly smile and clap. Well, then
Right.
all of a sudden the next year I was in ROTC, and then I'm wearing a rucksack, which, you know, you're dressed up in the camis and wearing the helmet and carrying a silly, you know, like a rubber M16. I mean, they weren't real, but
Right.
and then all of a sudden I watched the people lining the streets, and completely different. I mean, it was that look of distrust.
Mm-hmm.
Some wouldn't even look at you because they didn't want to even acknowledge that you were there. And I think what I saw the same thing in the 80s, especially, you know, when the hostages returned in 81. I mean, there were a number of things that really caused, in my opinion, national healing,
Right.
and helped people remember that the warrior is still part of your society, that we are a part of you. You know, we're not the enemy.
Right.
And I do agree. I mean, I saw it too when Saigon fell. You know, I really thought they were going to start the draft up again, and I thought all those things were going to, you know, eventually happen.
Right.
Thank God they didn't. You know, better or worse. I mean, the bottom line was at least we're out of it.
Right.
Maybe not the way we should have been, but nonetheless, the point is, I think our society has matured to say that we still own our warriors. Our warriors are us. And
Right.
even though I would argue that the all-volunteer force has caused a microcosm in our society, because a draft at least drew from all aspects of our society, now what we seem to have, and I've watched it with my friends, first of all, my friends served, then their children served, and
Right.
now their grandchildren are serving.
Right.
And it's a sad development, in my opinion, that we've become a subculture of the U.S. culture.
Right.
The average U.S. citizen may not even know somebody who served. I had one woman who saw me in uniform. You know, I'm in Utah, and there's not many of us here.
Right.
But I was in uniform, and she thought I worked for the Forestry Service because I was dressed as a shrub.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I had to point out that, you know, my name, you know, it had my name tag, but then it said U.S. Army on it. You know,
Yeah.
like, no, I'm in service. But anyway, it's kind of an interesting story.
Well, thank you. We have Holly Higgins, who's our final guest on here. She's in our back room, green room, so to speak. I'm going to bring her on. Holly, good to see you.
Say goodbye, Dennis. I've occupied your time way too much.
No. I just want, Holly, I want you to get the opportunity to meet my extremely good friend, Randy Schwally.
Hello.
We've been friends since the early 90s, you know, in service. And, you know, it's like, I think you said it once that it was, that you looked up to me as a mentor for that first, you know, 8-10 years or whatever we knew each other. And then he got to stay, I had to go, then he brought me back, and then he now outranked me, and I had to salute him, call him sir.
That was an ironic twist and very uncomfortable, but I have to tell the rest of that story, and I know there's some details here we got to figure out someday, but both our grandfathers were cooks in World War I. And I thought they were closer than they were, but the fact that our grandfathers served at the same time and then we served at the same time, I think that's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So for our guests and for Randy, Holly is a Gold Star mother, and I'm so honored to have you on, Holly, to tell your son's story, and we'll definitely want to give you as much time and whatever you want to share here today. You know, it's like, I know you're very active in the military family survivor community, and just appreciative of your willingness to let us tell his story too. So.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I was at an event early, but I got out of there, got to stay till the very end, and then raced home and made it, because you are very important to me. Your work is so important. So thank you. And I've told you that before. I'm always honored when you reach out to me. So I appreciate it. Any chance I can get to talk about Danny is really a gift to me.
Well, we appreciate that. And so basically, Randy, if you want to hang on here, you're welcome to, or I can put you back in the green room. And
I just don't want to interfere. I mean, I'm very interested in your story. That sounds like, I haven't heard it, so
we'll let you hang out here, and Holly.
Well, maybe can you put her in the middle? I mean,
I am not that skilled with these controls.
That's okay, but it helps to have more than one person to look at it. Now I'm going to go back and forth.
Holly, I'd love to hear your story. I don't, and again, I'll try and nose out of it, but Dennis, you can kick me off whenever you need to.
Oh, stay. I'm not in charge. Dennis is. I'll zip my mouth here.
No. Randy, you're fine. You just hang out whenever. If you have to go at some point, just kind of wave goodbye, and you can let yourself out. But I'm not going to kick you out.
Okay.
We've been friends way too long for that to happen. Holly, the floor is yours. Tell us about Danny.
Well, I was planning today to tell the story about his flag, and I know you've heard that one. Yes. I think you've probably heard the story of his cup too.
Mm-hmm. Well, but we have a few folks who are on the live stream currently, so they haven't. I'm assuming, because I don't know who they are. But yeah, this is a day. Your audience is not just me, and your audience is somebody else out there who's not familiar with you, is not familiar with Danny. So please.
That's awesome. I'll start with the flag story, and then if there's time, mm-hmm. I would love to tell that other story because that's more, I guess, maybe my story of recovering from him. But this is him. This is. I was talking to my my mentor Scott. Well, who's really the hero in this? I mean, I think it's Dan. He goes, no, I think, and we call hero like the protagonist in the story who makes the journey. And he goes, no, I think it's you too. This one is you too. So I'm like, but it's about Dan. So, I mean, they both are, but this is more about him. Okay. But I'd love to tell the cup story too, if we have time.
Absolutely. Well, let's go for it.
All right. So I'm going to start with the flag story, and then we'll take a little quick, I would like to get the props I need for the cup story before I start that, when I'm done with this one.
Okay. Well, I think Giselle is listening to us in the background, and Giselle, if there's anything that if Holly needs to send this to us to get it into the studio, please send her that link or whatever information via email that she needs. Maybe, let's see.
Oh, I was just going to run and get in my other room. I've got.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, that would be fine too.
That just take me a minute, but okay. We'll start with the flag. Okay. So it was a sunny September afternoon, and I had prepared everything for the moment my 22-year-old son, Danny, walked through the door. And the moment he walked in the door, I almost didn't recognize him. He didn't look different. It was the way he carried himself. It was his presence. Something had changed in a good way. He stood taller. He glided when he walked. He stood calmer and quieter. Danny was an EOD technician, bomb tech, explosive ordnance disposal, for anyone listening who's not familiar with that acronym. Bomb squad to us civilians with the United States Air Force. So that meant that it was his job to walk toward bombs that everyone else ran from. Danny had always wanted to serve and save lives. Even when he was in college and wrapping up his degree in civil engineering, he was taking fire science courses so he could be a firefighter too. And then he became an EMT and a paramedic before he became an EOD tech. It was clear to me that he knew he was saving countless lives disarming bombs. And as he walked toward me, that afternoon, he very discreetly pulled out this 3 foot by 5 foot folded flag and handed it to me and quietly said, "This is for you, Mom." Didn't explain it, and I didn't ask. I was so focused on the fact that my son was home, safe, whole, alive, that it didn't even occur to me to ask about the flag. I thanked him and I set it on the buffet next to his picture. And then through tears of joy, wrapped my arms around him and we celebrated his homecoming from his first deployment, which was to Iraq. A year later, he deployed to Afghanistan. That time, he did not come home. Whole, safe, or alive. That time, there was no celebrations, no tears of joy, only tears of profound sadness and that flurry of activity booking flights to get the whole family out to California for a military funeral service at Vandenberg Air Force Base. I don't remember much of those days. I had nothing to do with booking the flights, I can tell you that. My problem was breathing. That's what I remember. I couldn't breathe. And as my husband and I were heading out the door to catch our flight, I stopped and I ran inside and I grabbed Danny's flag. It was one he gave me the year before, still on the buffet, still next to his picture. And I just put it on my chest, but I could breathe. And I held it the whole way across the country. I'm sure my husband got some bizarre looks of this lady who was traveling with him, holding this flag on her chest. When we got to Vandenberg at the chapel, I sat in the front row, and a handsome airman in crisp dress blues kneeled in front of me and handed me that large, customary folded flag from a grateful nation. And then he pulled out another flag, like the one Danny had given me the year before. And it was during that service that they revealed the significance of these smaller flags. So when Danny was in Iraq, it was discovered that every time he was assigned a mission and had to don the bomb suit, he was strapping this flag over his chest inside the bomb suit. His good friend, Technical Sergeant John Homer, pulled him aside and said, "Dude, 1 ounce equals 1 pound." John was reminding Danny of what all bomb techs are taught early in training, that for every extra ounce of gear they wear inside the bomb suit, they will experience an additional pound of weight from that ounce, because those bomb suits, to start with, are already extremely heavy. They weigh between 80 to 100 pounds. And they're hot because of the lining of armor and software, so they can get up to 120 degrees on the inside. Oh, and by the way, they're smelly. Don't want to forget to throw this one in. I know, because Danny had me try one on so that I would experience a day in the life of a bomb tech. And I'll tell you, they're smelly too. Heavy, hot, and smelly. So John did his homework and he weighed this flag. It's 14.5 ounces. And he said, "Dan, you are adding and carrying 14.5 pounds on your uniform. We have patches that you can put on your t-shirt. Everyone else wore just t-shirt and shorts in those bomb suits. And then he pulled up his shirt, or do what I did. And he has a tattoo of the flag over his heart. And Danny respectfully declined and said, I plan to continue to strap this over my heart. And when I return home, I'm going to give it to my mom. By the time Danny was deployed to Afghanistan, he was newly married. And then he was strapping on 2 14.5-ounce flags, one in front of his heart and one behind, one for his mom and one for his wife. The equivalent of 29 pounds of extra weight, not because he had to, but because he chose to, because of the weight of the love he carried in his heart for his family and his country. People have asked me how he died. Was it while he was disarming a bomb? And interestingly, it's not. Kind of ironic. He was not in his bomb suit. He was in shorts and a t-shirt in an area that had already been cleared when he stepped on a pressure plate that had been missed by the combat engineers. In his book, First to Fall, retired Air Force Captain Wayne G. Sales refers to the tendency we have in this country to name buildings and parks and highways and bridges after heroes. And yet, since most of us are unfamiliar with those names, and we don't know what they did to make them heroes, we tend to not think of them as having been real people who lived real lives like my Danny and left behind real families like mine. Danny would be mortified if he knew today all the things that are named after him. And I'm only going to share a few, but the one that resonates deeply in my heart, deepest in my heart, is the main entrance and road leading into Vandenberg Air Force Base, now also known as Vandenberg Space Force Station. It was California Boulevard. It's now Senior Airman Daniel Johnson Boulevard. In Santa Maria, a small community right outside of Vandenberg where Danny lived at the time, there's a Dan Johnson Avenue. In Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, there's a park where Danny played as a 10-year-old that's now named Senior Airman Daniel J. Johnson Park. And just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, there's an award-winning state-of-the-art rock climbing facility named Senior Airman Daniel James Johnson Climbing Center. Danny was an avid rock climber, so much so that when he was in Baghdad, he actually built his own climbing wall. And he invited his teammates to stay in shape, climbing that wall, wearing that heavy, hot, and smelly bomb suit. There's a saying that you've probably heard, most people have, that a man dies twice. The first time is when he takes his last breath in this world. And the second time is the last time his name is spoken out loud. And one of my dearest friends, retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, former Green Beret, who's also an author and a playwright, has suggested that perhaps there's a third death. The third death may be the last time a hero's story is told. You know, names can fade, but stories keep those names alive in our hearts, in our brains, because our brains are wired to remember through story. Stories also help our brains make sense of senseless or seemingly senseless events. And when that happens, then our brains are able to find meaning and purpose in those events. I've started a new practice that I invite everyone I share this story with to start themselves. That when I find myself walking into a building or through a park named after a hero, or drive down a highway and I see so-and-so Memorial Highway, I stop. if I'm driving, but I stop whatever else I'm doing. If I'm talking, I pause and I just say that name out loud. And then I whisper in my heart a prayer for the real family, that real hero left behind. And I've also now begun remembering to look those heroes up and read their stories. In his book, The Things They Carried, Vietnam veteran Tim O'Brien says, stories are for joining the past to the future. Stories are for those late hours in the night when you can't remember how you got to where you are from where you were. Stories are for eternity, when memory is wiped out and all that's left is story. And because of that, I have chosen to continue as long as I have breath to tell my Danny's stories.
Well, thank you for that. That's a very moving piece of who Danny was. And
if I can interrupt, I just have to show you this flag was flown in Afghanistan and was brought back by one of my NCOs, and it sits on right here. I've not opened it. I'm not going to. It's a little smaller than yours, I think, but it's the same thing. But it was flown over the base, probably where your son was stationed, because we didn't have that much presence there. I know that. And my sincere condolences. I mean, even now, I mean, a loss is clearly a loss, and that's. I'm sure you live with it every day. Matter of fact, before you came on, I have a whole list of people that I live with their loss every day.
Yeah.
And it seems like the longer we live, the longer that list gets. You know, it's part of the human experience. But without question, I mean, your son cared about what he did and believed in what he did and did it with a higher calling in mind. And my hat's off to you. Also, I have to tell you, I'm from Wisconsin. So I was born in La Crosse.
Okay.
I'm a Green Bay fan to the end, but if it was somewhere.
You and my husband.
Yeah. Well,
Danny was not a Green Bay fan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He was born in Minnesota, so he holds out for the Vikings.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, that's.
Or he did.
Yeah, we have a black sheep of the family that's a Vikings fan too, but we still love them. Well, anyway, I wanted to share that, and without a doubt, your willingness to share his story and continue to tell his story, and it is neat that things were named after him, because you're right, that keeps it alive.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, for what it's worth, I just told Dennis this. I was watching the TV last night, and I saw something that I want to share with you as well. There's a Navy SEAL museum down in Fort Pierce, Florida, and I just went to it about a month ago. But they have dedications, because the SEALs are such a small community. They have a dedication of the ones they lost. And in that, part of the show that I watched is there were 4 guys there, and they assigned each of them a name of somebody going back to World War II.
Oh, and acted it out.
Well,
Yeah.
not just acted it out, but find out what their story is, and let's keep it alive. So what you're doing is spot on, and other people are realizing that as well. You know, and that Dennis is doing that by even having this foundation. So
Absolutely. And that's how we found each other, is because I work with an organization that actually helps storytelling. I guide people, veterans and family members and first responders and family members, on how to tell their story. And one of our staff people reached out to Dennis, and when I don't know if Kim, this was several years ago, and I don't know if she even knew what your foundation did when she reached out, but after you guys talked, she wrote to me immediately, "Oh, you've got to meet Dennis Rainer." So telling the story. I work with other mothers and now we're working with people, not even veterans.
Right.
There really are people in this world that still deserve. We're working with and for Scott's for-profit side and helping CEOs and utilize storytelling to their management to help their business grow, because stories, though it's the way the brain is wired, but for families especially and veterans to tell the story. The world needs to hear the wisdom that is gained through suffering, through true and real sacrifice. And so for me, that's my calling now. That's my focus in life, is to help other people find their voice and tell their stories. And I continue to tell my son's stories.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to run and go get those two things that I wanted to mention.
Absolutely. We'll keep the conversation going until you get back here. All right. So. All right. So,
Dennis, it does bring up a point, though, and that's that Afghanistan was very quiet in the beginning, and it certainly picked up as time went on, as the longer we were there.
right.
But for a long time, it wasn't even part of the story, because it seemed like everything was going towards Iraq.
Right.
Afghanistan was still very active, and matter of fact, I mentioned Gordon earlier. That's where he spent his time, almost a year and a half.
Right.
So he spent a lot of time there, but it was maybe calm in the beginning, but even the cultures that they were immersed in were tremendously different.
Oh, yeah.
Afghanistan was more like feudalism Europe, as opposed to a well-developed country like Iraq. So it was a very different experience.
It's so easy for us in half the world away to try to simplify things in our mind and kind of put everything into the folks in the Middle East are all like this, or to recognize that there are many layers of nuance and difference between those peoples and their societies. And so it's like, it kind of gets back to what we were discussing earlier about human nature and how that hasn't changed since time began, really. And so therefore we go back to how we are biologically kind of created to deal with groupings of 100, 150 people, and anything outside that becomes problematic. It's our clan versus the other tribe. It's it's simpler to categorize people into groups, a handful of groups versus knowing every single individual. But it's worthwhile, because to try to break out of that mold, this is what I think we've all expressed to some degree or another, because there are problems when we lump people together, because it's like, Randy, you and I are not the same people. We come from different backgrounds, even though we were both medical service corps officers, at least for a time. Then you went off in the aviation world, but
well, even within the same organization, I mean, I was in 3 different branches at one point, or throughout the career. But what's fun is we seem to poke fun at our differences, and I'm tempted to poke fun at the Air Force, which I like to do anyway, but I won't do that this time. My family has people in all the services, so we have a good time poking each other and all those things. But it's more of a playful difference, knowing that we're still called for the same service.
Right.
It's just a matter of, do you wear flippers, or are you in a cockpit somewhere, or what's the role as
right.
opposed to what's the purpose? Maybe
right.
That's the right way to say it.
Yeah, welcome back, Holly. I was going to say just before you left that hopefully we'll get a chance for you to see our first guest, Marie, and I think that you'll connect at a heart level with where she was at and some of the things that she was doing, and I just think there's always there's always some benefit in making connections. I don't know what that's going to be, but it's like, I love doing it. And oftentimes people tell me, I'm glad you made that introduction for me. So hopefully that's important. So
I was just going to comment on what Randy was talking about too, the teasing and stuff. I have 4 sons. Mm-hmm. And so when Danny went into the Air Force, that was, you're going into the Air Force. And of course I was like, yeah. And then he kept telling me, Mom, there's no infantry in the Air Force, or he didn't say that, his brother. So I was like, okay, cool. That's good. That's all good. And then, of course, I said, so what's your MOS? And he goes, oh, it's EOD. And I'm like, oh, okay, duh. I knew nothing. And finally, one of my other sons said, Mom, that's an acronym for explosive ordnance disposal. I'm like, are you talking bombs? And he's like, yeah. And I said, so no infantry. So then he goes in front of the other branches infantry. And his brother's like, yeah, Mom, isn't that cool? I'm like, no.
Yeah, not what a parent wants to hear, that's for sure.
No, but.
Well, it was a calling, obviously, and it must have been something he was drawn to.
Yeah, even when before he died, he was, he never lost consciousness in the explosion. And he was telling them what to do to try to save his life because, as the paramedic, he was telling them, but and it was just his team. They didn't have the training, but he was always lucid and calm. And they told me that, but of course, I thought, yeah, like they could tell me anything. Who knows? I don't know what's true or not. But then we were notified that the medevacs had a message for us, and it was from Dan that they had to get to Danny's mom. And as he was being loaded on the transport, they said the typical, you're going home, son, kind of thing. And he said to them, I know, but will somebody please tell my mom I didn't break my face? And I was like, oh, they couldn't make that up. That's a family joke from when he was 5 years old. And that he said, I know, but tell my mom told me he knew he was dying. He knew he wasn't coming to our home. He was going to the forever home. And, but it gave me, it told me that they were telling me the truth. He was calm. He was lucid. He hadn't lost his sense of humor right to the very end. In fact, that was the last thing they said. That it was like within 10 minutes he was gone. But and that goes back to when he was 5 years old and we took the train. He wasn't even 5 yet. He was 4. We took the training wheels off his bike, and we lived at the top of the hill. And he had 2 older brothers who would race down that hill. And I'd always say, you cannot go down the hill. Yeah, you're not ready. You don't have the balance, but of course. And then his 2-year-old brother was up on the top with me riding around. And I turned to look at Eric for a moment, and bam, he was down that hill, of course. And he wiped out at the bottom, and I ran down, and half his face was road rash. And, he sobbed and sobbed, and I held him on my lap for what felt like hours. And finally, he got to that point of, I'm not even 5, and I already broke my face. And everybody who had gathered around just cracked up. And so for the rest of his short life, when he'd go places like for sporting overnight trips, I'd say, don't break your face, or camp, don't break your face. And then for the deployments, I'd say, don't break your face. And that was his last message. So it was a gift to me to know that they didn't lie to me. They didn't make that up. You can't make that up.
Exactly. They wouldn't know how to do that, right?
No.
So you want to show us what it is you went to get?
Well, I'll tell the story, okay, and then I'll show it when it's the timing. Now, I haven't told this one in a while. This is what I did that TEDx talk on.
Before you do that, can I just interrupt a little bit?
Yeah.
This hits home a little bit with me. One of my critical care nurses was stationed at Launch Stool, and people don't know this part of the story either, but the critical cases, both in Afghanistan and Iraq, they would wrap them and stabilize them and put them on the airplane and get them to Launch Stool as fast as they could. And so it was the idea that they would the worst cases, the worst trauma cases ended up in Landstuhl. And one of my critical care nurses was one of the people who unwrapped all of those cases. And in the Army culture, which is a little bit different, when you serve in a combat zone, you get a right shoulder patch. So you wear that the rest of your career, and people know that you served in a combat zone. She wasn't allowed to do that, even though her job was far more horrific than her peers that could wear the patch. And it was very ironic that even somehow it affected her benefits. I'm no expert on this, but because she didn't serve in a combat zone, she also was maybe discounted a little bit more with the VA when she finally got out. But the point was, she never was in the country, but yet her job required her to do far more in-depth, much more critical. And I was hoping that if he would have made it to Landstuhl, she would have put her hands on him without a doubt, because that's what she did. And she's had some struggles too, just readapting and trying to gain legitimacy for what she did. And yet, because she never put foot in those places, her service was discounted, even within our own services. Now, that may not mean anything to a civilian, but to us, it's really odd that there are lines that we draw of our own that kind of, I'm going to use the word cheapen, but that's not the right word, but it sort of discounts the value of the service.
Discounts, it doesn't hold them in as high of esteem as they deserve. Yeah, is what they gave.
Another unfortunate story, and I'll bow. I don't mean to take your time. A good friend that I worked with in the Pentagon in health affairs at OSD level, his son was a West Point cadet and was an infantry lieutenant in Afghanistan, and a sniper shot him. And the only story that we got is he was walking through a field and he was dead before he hit the ground. So it was quick, but people don't realize, again, the severity of what our people were doing there. And it was very real. It was very personal when it affects you, but Afghanistan didn't have the front row that Iraq did. And it's a sad reality. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's unfortunate that the people who served there, and especially the people who died there, are recognized for they did what every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine does. They served and took the same risks that all of us did. Anyway, having said that, I'll bow out and thank you for presenting that.
Well, this story actually starts when Danny was 16. So my 16-year-old son, Danny, has just returned home from a trip to Europe. This summer, he went to Europe with a mission group. And he came up to me with a small gift box. And he said, "I'm sorry, Mom, it's not perfect. It's imperfect. It's a second." And I'm like, "Imperfect?" Well, inside the box was a beautiful porcelain cup covered in red flowers. And I remember looking at it, I don't see anything imperfect, do you? And he goes, "I didn't either, but that's what they told me at the shop." But it was the only one there. And the minute I saw it, I thought of you, and I had to get it for you. I'm like, all I saw was a beautiful gift from a sweet boy who loved his mom. And that was the summer of 2003. 7 years later, that sweet boy was a courageous man serving in the United States Air Force as an EOD technician, bomb squad to us civilians. Danny saved countless lives disarming IEDs until October 5th of 2010, when 7,000 miles from home on a dusty road in Afghanistan, he stepped on a pressure plate, setting off a blast. The pain from that loss was more than mental and emotional and spiritual. There was a physical reaction my body had. I remember at the time, the only way I could describe it to my husband was I felt like there was this fire burning inside of me. It was a burning in my soul. It's the only way I could describe it. I lived with that burning and that pain and a fog for months and months, a long time. Actually, probably more like years. But eventually, the fog lifted. The pain did not, but the fog lifted. And it was around then that I met Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, retired Green Beret, and he was teaching veterans the healing power of storytelling. And he discovered it on his difficult transition when he came home and almost took his own life. I mean, it was so close that if his son had not come home from school early and interrupted him, he wouldn't have made it. He had every intention of ending it. But he discovered that storytelling has this healing power for the brain and the heart. And when we met, he said to me, I promise you, Holly, if you tell Danny's story, I can't do an Arkansas accent. He calls himself an Arkansonian, what else is it? The mountain people, but I can't do his accent. I promise you, you tell Danny's story, it'll start to heal your broken heart. And so the first time I tried, the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't get them out. But I kept working on it at his insistence. And I soon discovered that with each telling, my heart healed a little bit more. So 2017, fast forward to 2017. Well, let me back up. I forgot a piece of this. Right after Danny died, I told you about the fog and the pain and all that. The other thing I noticed is that all the color drained from my world. I felt like I was living in this black and white, somber, noir film, just except for those red flowers on that cup he gave me. That was the only color I had. And I drank my coffee from that cup every day. And even on bright summer days, I still felt like I was walking in this black and white film. But so now we fast forward, I'm starting to discover that every time I told his story, my heart healed a little bit more. And in October of 2017, I was drinking coffee from Danny's cup when it slipped and it hit the ground, a ceramic floor, porcelain cup, didn't shatter, it just broke right in half, which is kind of a weird thing that doesn't happen with porcelain done on that kind of a tile. Broke perfectly in half. So I was like, oh, okay, I can glue this back together. And my husband stopped me and said, no, Lovey. I can't do his accent either, but I can do his nickname. No, Lovey, don't. That cup is now the perfect metaphor for your heart. Since it's been broken open these years, I've noticed, he told me, that you love greater and deeper. You have a greater capacity for love. So keep the cup like that open. And so, he was right. I just I nested it together and I put it on my nightstand. And it's the first thing I see every morning and the last thing I see every night. A month later, Veterans Day of 2017, I was reading the biography of all these lieutenant colonels. There's a lot of them. Huh? Looking at Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who was a Canadian Army surgeon in World War I. And he also happens to be the poet who wrote In Flanders Fields. And I just got into this part in his biography that he's from a place called Guelph, Ontario, when I got a call from a man who told me his name was Joe, a Canadian Army soldier. I'm like, whoa, talk about a coincidence, if there's such a thing, which I know there isn't. His name was Joe, and he served with Danny, because Danny was attached to the Allies. And this was the first time he ever called me. 7 years. He did say he'd had a long time of transition, But I was so excited to hear from him. And I said, look, we're going to get together in northern Minnesota where the kids were born. And would you come? I'd love you to meet Danny's brothers and stepsisters and everybody. And so he agreed to do that. Before we hung up, I said, so where in Canada are you from? Guelph, Ontario. I'm like, wait a minute. Did you know? And he goes, yeah, you're going to talk about John McCrae. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, we've got his statue and all that. We know, and I'm like, whoa, coincidences. So I changed that word, by the way. I call them God incidences now. So I hung up the phone, and at that moment, now I'd had this cup at that time for 14 years. This was 2017. At that moment, I thought about that cup, and I had this light bulb reaction. I ran to my nightstand, picked them up, 2 pieces. I looked at them, and I realized that what I had been looking at for 14 years without ever seeing were poppies. Those red flowers, that cup was covered in poppies. And in that moment, I knew my son was always going to die on a battlefield. I'm not saying that God planned it that way. I'm not saying that, but we all have a destiny. We all have a timeline. It's all there. And that was always going to happen. And it suddenly, it did something inside of me to know that. And then I turned them inside out. So I was looking at them up, and I turned them inside. Now that it's broken open, by the way, I saw what made it what made it imperfect. Inside, way down at the bottom, was a small flower with the Latin name, but it wasn't a poppy. It wasn't red. It was a blue flower. And the Latin name is agapanthus. And I looked that up. It's derived from 2 Greek words, anthus for flower and agape for selfless, sacrificial love. In that moment, I knew that cup was not imperfect. There was no mistake made the day that cup was made. Just like Danny's death was not, and this is hard, but it was not a mistake. It was always going to be that way, though he never could have known. But when I got to that point, I realized something happened in my heart, inside of me. A peace about it all just came. And I knew from that moment on that there was like a balm that started soothing that burning in my soul. So eventually, Joe visited our family in northern Minnesota. And the first night we sat around the fire and told stories, and it got late and everybody went to bed. We were talking about the kids growing up and the funny stories and how the boys would splash through the swamps every chance they had, which wasn't a lot because of the frozen. But when they were thawed, they were in those swamps, capturing every creature they could to torment their mom. They were good at. And there was one story about the time I couldn't find them. It was bedtime and it was late. And in northern Minnesota, the sun's up. The sunset isn't until after 9:30, almost 10. And I was trying to find those boys. And somebody said to me, look behind your garage. I looked and there was dirt coming out of the ground. I'm like, what in the heck? I went over there and there they were in a trench about 5 feet down. And they said, hey, Mom, we are digging we're digging a tunnel under the garage. We can't stop now. So anyway, after things kind of calmed down, the funny stories and the girls and everybody went to bed except my 3 sons and Joe and me. And Joe finally spoke. And he told us that his recovery, as he had mentioned to me, was long, 7 years. And he went through addiction and suicide attempts, heroin and alcohol. And he did a lot of treatment, in hospital treatment. And he said, I waited to call you till I was at a place where I was no longer recovery. No, he was sober and no longer trying to commit suicide, no longer feeling that hyper startle reflex so that he could come and be with us and not be crazy, as he put it. So, but he said very quietly, put his head down, and he said, you know, there are times though, like tonight, when I ask myself, well, let me back up and say, he also told us that he happened to be the combat engineer that missed the IED that killed Danny. So that's when he said, there are times like tonight when I ask myself if the wrong man came home. And I went inside and I grabbed the half of Danny's cup that had the agapanthus inside. And I handed it to him and I told him the story of the cup. And then I said the hardest words I've ever said as a mom, but they're words of truth. I said, the right man came home. It was Danny's destiny to die on that battlefield, not yours. Your destiny, Joe, was to come home and to heal. So welcome home. Welcome to our family, brave warrior. He looked at me, his cheeks were soaked, he was soaking wet. He was crying, his shoulders were shaking, and he said, for 7 years, family, friends, and professionals have tried to crack through my survivor's guilt. And the last person I ever expected was Danny's mom. And the last thing I thought you could do it with was a broken cup. She said, I really thought you were going to agree with me. You were going to be the one person in the world who would say, yeah, the wrong man. You were the one that was going to give me what I thought I needed to have, I thought was truth. And you was the exact opposite. So that was, I think, Danny's gift to both of us. And I'm going to read the words of Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, if you don't mind, since it's a special day for that. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the lark still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. We loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Danny could not have known the day he bought this cup from me. This is the half I kept. See how perfect it broke? I mean, you can't get any more. It even rests like you wouldn't even know it if you saw it on the table. Right. He could not have known that he was throwing me a torch. He was throwing from his failing hands a torch, a destiny, and a sacred mission to be there for veterans like Joe, who come home missing pieces of their hearts that they left on the battlefield with their fallen brothers and sisters. That I could offer love and support and hope to them and to families like mine, whose beloved sons and daughters never come home again. This is my torch, and I always end this with, what's yours?
Holly, I need to add to that. Dennis, I talked to you about the second edition, and part of what I was remiss in the first version was regret and survivor guilt. And anyone who's served, well, anyone who's lived, I'm sure has regret and things that we wish we would have done differently, especially if it costs someone their lives or injury. And I mean, I have a story too. And I mean, most of us do. And it's one of those things that, there, but by the grace of God go I. I mean, I've said that many times, and it's one of those things that without question, you were part of his healing. And without question, anyone who has served in any capacity, especially in a situation where you might have missed something, you can't help but carry that. It's part of your being. And part of what veterans, and I do need to lean on this part of it, we don't need a lighter load. We don't need more medications from the VA. What we need is something that gives us the strength to carry our own stories, even when some of it results in bad things, whether it's death or dismemberment or some kind of bad thing that occurred because of the decision we either made or didn't make. And that's part of a veteran's story. It's part of our ability to carry our own.
We say in our workshops for storytelling that no struggle, no story. I mean, that's where the gold is. That's where this elixir is in the suffering, in the sacrifice, be it, like you said, limbs or sight or the guilt or whatever it is. I mean, I work with mothers who, I've got a mom I'm working with right now who's going to be speaking in June to a VFW summit kind of thing, like a whole, but and she has never yet, her son died in 2005, so 21 years. This will be the first time she's speaking publicly about his death, and it was suicide on a base in Missoula. I mean, that's an important message to know that happens, and in that horrible story, there's eventually, as we tell it, like I said, as we tell stories, our brains make sense somehow. And like for me, it was that there's hope, that we all have a destiny. Danny fulfilled his destiny. It hurts me that he died so young, but he saved countless lives before he died, and like I told Joe, his destiny was to come home and to heal and to recover and now move forward.
A little bit too. I have a dear friend who served 3 tours in Vietnam, and one day, just a very mundane decision. He had something to do, so he swapped his what do they used to call him? Patrol. He swapped his patrol with another guy because he had something administrative to do. I mean, he had 3 tours there. Well, that day, that guy was killed. And to this day, he carries the guilt of, had I been there instead of him, he would still be alive. And, it's one of those things. I agree with you. It's destiny. Sometimes it's just, and I don't know if dumb luck is the right way to look at it either, but for whatever reason, the circumstance is you were meant to be here. You were meant to survive. And that one mundane question or, situation that changed slightly that saved your life and cost the life of someone else is not the guilt you need to carry.
No, in fact, the other thing I share, and I shared this with Scott because he was in his play. Dennis saw one of his plays. He's got another one now, but in his play Last Out, he plays the part of a master sergeant who lost, 23 men. And that part is autobiographical. The whole play is not all. It's actually all true stories, but it's a composite. But there are some autobiographical parts, and that there's a scene in that Dennis probably, it was several years he saw it, but there's a scene where this master sergeant and his wife are fighting about their son enlisting. And the wife is like, he just wants to be like you. He's just following. He's proud. And he pulls off, he's got a remembrance bracelet like I do. And he pulls it off and he goes, I have 23 of these. I don't want the 24th to be my son. So powerful. And Scott carries those 23 lives in his heart because he says 23 died under my command, doing what I told them to do. And he was actually the first person I shared the other half of the cup with, and to be totally, I mean, we talked about how if changing that perspective, that lens of how you look at, you were given the gift of being a part and maybe it's watching, or like even for Joe, being a part of another man or woman fulfilling their destiny. Instead of blaming yourself that you did something wrong, no, you could not have stopped it. Nobody could have changed that. It was the way it was going to be, and those who are carrying that like weight that Randy talked, that's false guilt, and it devastates your life and it eats up any calling. It destroys a life. One other mom I was going to mention I'm working with, just to tell you the power of these, like you said, the suffering, the struggle. Here's another one whose son served at the same time my son did. He came home and he was, Bronze Star, which my daddy got too, with a V, all those wonderful things. And this man he actually got the Silver Star. He got all sorts of wonderful awards. But he was so damaged from the war, and he actually had the terrible TBIs, and from the waves of those blasts going through him, and he started having the hallucinations they're seeing now in this different kind of TBIs that are from blasts, from firing those big cannons and whatever they do, and what that does to their brains. And he was having hallucinations and misseeing things, and he died, but it was suicide, but it was suicide by cop, because he shot somebody, and then it was a horror. And it's taken her 16 years, but she knows there's value in that story. I told her, you cannot for a moment think you're the only mother whose son or daughter has had that happen. There's no way. We know it's happened. And so if you tell your story and one person hears that and goes, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one, and find hope and connect, and like connection, Dennis, like you talk about the power and the value and connection. That's how we heal. So
That's right.
Holly, I want to offer two things. First of all, while I didn't know this, but while I was in Iraq, a very dear friend had a bracelet made with my name on it. And when I got back, she gave it to me. And I can tell you that seeing your own name on a bracelet, knowing what that meant, especially during the Vietnam War and what's meant since, in a very odd way, helped me come back. And so I don't know how your friend would feel about if you had one made and gave it to him, but it might do something. It's kind of like realizing that, you in an odd way, I hate to use the word, I'm not going to use it, but it can promote healing in maybe an obscure way.
And yes, and really the conversations that we've had throughout this time that we've been together, we are honoring our fallen. We are honoring those that paid the ultimate price, but really we are trying to find ways for healing of those left behind, us, the living. And
right.
That's there is value in telling the stories, paying tribute and honor to those that we knew, those that we loved, who have who have fallen. And yes, the focus today is those that fell while they were serving. That is the at least the initial focus of the foundation that I started, but it goes way beyond that. It goes way, way, way beyond that. And I guess for anyone listening, what I've heard throughout these almost 3 hours that we've been on now is tell the story. There's an importance in telling the story, as painful as it is, as things don't need to be sugar-coated. The truth needs to be told. And that's, my focus is telling the truth honorably. We're not looking to put blame or shame or anything like that. There's far more of that around than is needed. I believe, and I think it's been echoed by everybody else here today, that telling the truth, telling the story, being honest and vulnerable has healing for us and provides hope and connection and healing for others. So, that's what we're all about. And, honestly, the time limit that we set was an arbitrary one. I just said, how long do I think I need to can be here? And so if there's nothing magic going to happen when we hit 1 o'clock here, this isn't going to just pop off and end. So, if you want to hang around, you're welcome to do so. If you need to go someplace and, wrap it up for today, that's absolutely fine too. But I just wanted to hop in and share that.
I just want to reemphasize what you were saying, Dennis. In our work with storytelling and teaching people to find their voice, helping them find their voice and how to frame it and how to share it. And we tell people that initially, when you tell your story, you're the initial beneficiary. Your brain makes sense, and suddenly, like for me, even though it certainly seems like a senseless event that Daniel died when he did, but he chose to go and do that, and I know he saved lives, and I just and I was able to kind of come to that point where that was his destiny, and I found peace, especially in that cup. There's no way he knew, but look at how it just all fit and made sense, that he was ultimately destined to make a sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice. But so in telling the story, I was able to do all that. And then my brain made sense. And then I found meaning and purpose out of it. And now when I share it, like with the TEDx talks, and when I I'll be on a podcast later this week, and I spoke at our university, different things going on. Now it's to the audience, it's to my listeners. And if you don't tell, the reason I'm sharing that is because you said, tell the truth. Because if you don't tell the truth, as painful, ugly, sordid as it is, people are going to go, they're not going to connect. There won't be a connection. If you just say, well, I have figured this out. And, if I were to say, if I sugarcoated or went past those dark days where I couldn't find any color in my life, where I felt this burning in my soul, where there's way more to it than that. But if I don't talk about that, other people, and then all of a sudden I have this answer, it was just my son's destiny. Other people are going to go, oh, great for you. My son's destiny wasn't to die like that. And, they're not going to find any connection. But the goal is that we become relatable to people's pain. And you can't be relatable to someone's pain if you're not telling the truth and sharing your ugly, painful mess, and then relevant to their goals. And that's that second half when you find meaning, purpose. For me, it's the calling to be able to do what I do and reach out to people. Everybody's going to have a different calling, but the goal is healing and hope. I guess the bottom line is hope, because without hope, you're not going to heal.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. Randy, any closing final thoughts from you, my friend?
Just appreciate being a part of this. I think you brought out a tremendous amount. Holly says, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, if you're ever out in Park City, Randy lives not very well. I'm not sure you are in Park City back now, right? So,
between mostly Salt Lake in these days, but I try to get to Park City as much as I can. It's not very.
He can show you some really interesting places in that area that tourists that come to Salt Lake City usually stay in Salt Lake City and come up for season, but there's off-season stuff that's very interesting.
My husband's high school buddy lives in Park City, or did. And our very first anniversary after Danny died, that's where we went to hang out in Park City. And it was October, so it was kind of off season, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. That was my being in the mountains close to heaven. And after that, I always wanted to be in other mountains. Like we've done Blue Ridge and Smoky. We were at the Great Smoky Park. You know, any mountains around October is my dream.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to thank everybody, all of my guests, Marie, Randy, Holly. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing the stories of your fallen loved ones or friends or colleagues. I want to thank behind the scenes Giselle Asso, who is our my virtual assistant. She lives in the Philippines. She does an awesome work for us. She's the one, if anybody has seen any of the videos that we created to promote this event, there were 6 videos that were created. We had some AI help with Chat GPT to kind of get the script, etc., and ideas together, but she's the one who put the videos together. She's the one that found all the video elements. I want to thank the people who provided the voiceover script. There, I did one. We had an AI voice for the first one that I was like, oh, okay, well, it's all right, but I want real people. A friend of mine, Rob, who's hangs out in my cigar lounge in town with me, and then 3 ladies. Courtney Barnes lives in Bowling Green, Kentucky. My wife, Penny, who of course lives with me, and a friend, Alicia Smith, who lives up in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Thank you for providing your voices to those videos, and this is a group effort. We haven't engaged with Keith Hayden in a while, but Keith was the author of the first published work that we have. Awesome man that is extremely talented. I want to thank the members of the board of directors, past and present, and we welcome anyone who has a heart for this to come join us. Whether that's as a volunteer, whether that's in whatever capacity. This is a monumental task that's been put on my heart, and we need the help. We appreciate the help that from those that are helping, but we need a whole lot more. So I'm going to sign off with 2 videos, and guys, I'm going to be in touch with you all soon, individually. Thank you so much. I'm the founder of the Price of Freedom Foundation, and I'm here today to talk to Gold Star families. It is you that we are here to serve. You have suffered an unspeakable loss. This is something that no one can possibly
replace. It's a gap that no one can possibly fill. We recognize that. But we also know that many Gold Star families have a sense of being alone, eventually feeling like they and their loved one and the sacrifice that was made has been forgotten. What we want to do is to stand beside you and to walk alongside you in this period of grief, and to be able to capture the entirety of the life story of your fallen loved one. I believe that if we can talk to the people that knew them during the course of their lifetime, from when they were children, while they were in school, while they were in the military, and when they were involved in things outside of the military, and capture a piece of that experience that their friends and colleagues and family members had of their life, that we can tell the complete story, or as complete a story as possible, of who they were, the entirety of that person. I believe that by doing this, by telling that full life story, by being able to put it into written form, that you can have something that will be able to be passed down to future generations, and hopefully this is something that you will find very valuable and that those future generations will find valuable as well. But more so, I know that most Gold Star families will benefit by our telling your loved one's story to an audience now. And so that is why we intended to use the recordings of the interviews that we do to tell that story in a documentary video format. And our intent is to tell that story on an ongoing basis to an audience that is wider than what most families can reach themselves, and to tell it from the perspective of a third party. And I believe that by doing so, your loved one will be remembered on an ongoing basis, and that it can give you some comfort and solace in this process. Is this going to be an easy process? No, it's not. In many cases, I know it will be asking you to open up some old wounds and to talk to us about some of the pain that you have experienced and may still be experiencing. But I personally believe that the benefit of being able to compile and tell your loved one's story will be worth that. And I will guarantee you that myself and everyone associated with the Price of Freedom Foundation will be there with you from a perspective of empathy and understanding, and that we are not looking to fix anything, because we know we can't fix it, but we are there to honor your loved one and honor the sacrifice that you continue to make by them not being a part of your life anymore. So please contact us, have a conversation about getting started in telling your loved one's story.